No Safe Harbor. A dark romance novel. Table of contents. Prologue. The wrong door. She ran to the police for protection. But the Mafia boss was sitting at the captain's desk. The city doesn't care. That's the first thing you understand when you're running through it at 2 a.m. The city simply does not care. The rain keeps coming. The cabs keep passing. The lit windows of other people's lives keep glowing from above, warm and unreachable, indifferent to the woman sprinting down the center of the sidewalk with her shoes in her hand and blood on her palm, and 6 months of held breath finally tearing out of her lungs. I drop my shoes a block from the precinct. I don't go back for them. The pavement is cold. I feel every crack through the thin soles of my stockings, every gutter seam, every small stone. I count them. It's something I do when I'm close to coming apart. I find the smallest physical detail I can, and I hold on to it like a splinter of driftwood. The concrete. The cold. The specific weight of rain hitting the back of my neck. Anything but the car that's been following me for 4 blocks. It started at 9th and Elm. Not following, that implies something obvious. This was subtler. A black sedan maintaining a precise distance, never gaining, never falling behind. When I stopped at the corner and pretended to check my phone, it stopped too. When I turned left instead of right, it turned left. Patient. Professional. The way a wolf follows at the edge of a field. Not because it's hungry right now, but because it plans to be. I've had 6 months to learn the difference between paranoia and pattern recognition. This is pattern recognition. The 9th precinct is 3 blocks away. I know this the way I know my own apartment layout, my emergency exits, the fastest routes between any 2 points in a 6-block radius. I've been mapping escape routes since October. Since the night I pressed myself against the fire escape railing 4 floors up and watched a man in a gray coat put 2 bullets in my colleague's chest, then look up at the building across the street, methodical, thorough, as if confirming no witnesses. I flattened myself against the brick. I don't know if he saw me. 6 months of not knowing, and I'm still not sure which answer would be worse. The precinct comes into view at the end of the block. A squat limestone building with a blue light above the entrance, buzzing faintly in the rain. It looks exactly like what it is. Permanent, official, safe. I've walked past it 100 times without going in. I told myself I needed more information. I told myself I needed a lawyer first, a plan, someone I trusted. I told myself the men I'd watched kill Nathan Holt had nothing to do with me, that staying quiet was the rational choice, the survivable one. Then, 3 days ago, someone left a photograph in my mailbox. Me. At the coffee shop on Mercer Street. Taken through the window. From the street. The kind of angle that means they were standing 6 feet away while I was reading the news and drinking my coffee. And believing I was invisible. No note, no threat, just the photograph. Just to show me they could. I shoulder through the precinct door. The warmth hits me first. The specific institutional warmth of a building that never fully cools, radiators clanking somewhere beneath the floors. It smells like burnt coffee and damp wool, and the particular staleness of a space where too many people have sat for too long, waiting for things that may or may not arrive. The fluorescents flicker once, then hold. A uniformed officer at the front desk looks up from his phone. He takes me in, wet hair, bare feet, bloodied palm, and his expression shifts through several phases before landing on cautious concern. Can I help you? My voice comes out smaller than I intended. I need to speak with someone, a detective, or, I press my good hand against the desk to steady myself, someone in charge. I have information about a homicide. I've had it for 6 months, and I think I'm being watched, and I stop, breathe. I think if I leave this building tonight without protection, I won't make it to morning. The officer is already reaching for his radio. The next 15 minutes are a blur. A towel pressed into my hands, someone asking my name, a different officer guiding me through a security door that buzzes and clicks and closes behind me with a sound like something sealing. I register the details the way you do in shock. The scuff marks on the hallway walls at shoulder height. The motivational poster someone has taped beside the water fountain and then half torn down. The smell of the coffee getting stronger as we climb. Captain's upstairs, the officer says. He'll want to hear this directly. I nod. I'm still holding the towel. My feet are leaving wet prints on the linoleum. We stop at a door at the end of the hall. The officer knocks twice, opens it without waiting for an answer. Found her downstairs, sir. Says she has information on an open homicide. Says she's been compromised. A pause from inside the room. Then a voice, low, unhurried, the kind of voice that has never once needed to raise itself to be heard. Send her in. The office is smaller than I expected. Books on a shelf, real ones, not decorative. A desk that is actually being used, papers, a lamp, a coffee mug, leaving its ring on a legal pad. The window behind the desk looks out onto the street below, and the rain trails down the glass in long, branching lines. It looks, for a disorienting moment, almost ordinary. Then I look at the man behind the desk, and the word ordinary evacuates the room entirely. He's standing, not sitting. He must have risen when the door opened. Some reflex of authority or courtesy or both. He's tall in the way that fills a space, rather than simply occupies it. Dark hair, a little longer than regulation would suggest. A suit that has no business being that well cut in a police captain's office at 2 a.m. His face is, I catalog it the way I catalog everything, quickly and in detail, a habit from years of legal work, angular, composed, handsome, in a way that is somehow also a warning, like something beautiful that you're not supposed to touch. His eyes are dark, steady, already watching me. He watched me come through the door and he hasn't looked away since. Miss, the officer begins. Mercer, I say, Sloane Mercer. I was a paralegal at Holt & Associates until October, when I witnessed the murder of Nathan Holt on the corner of... The man behind the desk raises one hand. A small gesture, 2 fingers lifted from the surface of the desk. The officer stops talking immediately, nods once, withdraws. The door closes behind him. And now it's just the 2 of us in this small office, and the rain on the glass, and the silence, which is the loudest thing in the room. The man doesn't move, doesn't speak. He simply watches me, and there is something in that watching that I cannot name. Something careful and deliberate and ancient, like a calculation being run very quickly behind very still eyes. I've been a paralegal for 5 years. I've sat in rooms with dangerous people. I know what it looks like when someone is deciding something about you. He is deciding something about me. I need protective custody, I say. My voice is steady, I'm proud of that. I have information about Nathan Holt's murder. I know who was there. I can identify. Miss Mercer. He says my name the way you say a word you already knew, not learning it, confirming it. Something cold moves through me, slow, like ice water finding the lowest path. He hasn't introduced himself, hasn't asked for ID, hasn't reached for a form or a notepad or any of the bureaucratic apparatus that should accompany a witness walking into a police station with a 6-month-old homicide case. He just says my name. And then he does something that will stay with me for a very long time after this moment. He moves to the chair on the visitor's side of the desk, my side, and he pulls it out, slowly, and he sets it down facing him, and he looks at me with those steady, dark eyes, and he says, "We've been expecting you." The room is very warm. I am very cold. And the door behind me, I realize now, slowly, with the particular horror of understanding something you cannot ununderstand, has no handle on the inside.
If you're enjoying this story, you can download the full audiobook as an MP3 for free. Just check the link in the description below. Now, let's continue the story.
Chapter 1. Gilded Bars. I wake up to silence. Real silence. Not the dense, traffic-muffled quiet of my apartment on Fulton Street, but the kind that exists in rooms that cost too much money and have too much insulation, and are designed specifically so that the world outside cannot reach you. The walls here are thick enough to absorb everything: sound, consequence, the particular noise of a city that has already forgotten you're gone. I lie still for a moment, eyes on the ceiling. The ceiling is coffered. Dark wood panels in recessed squares, with a single fixture at the center. Not a light fixture exactly, more like something that produces warmth and glow without committing to the vulgarity of being obviously useful. It looks like it belongs in a museum. It looks like it belongs somewhere I have never been and will never be. And yet here I am. I sit up slowly. The bed is extraordinary, which is annoying, because I want to be angry, and it's difficult to be angry when you've just slept better than you have in 6 months, on a mattress that feels like it was engineered by someone with a personal vendetta against insomnia. The sheets are cream-colored, heavy, faintly warm, in a way that suggests the room is temperature-controlled to something precise and considered. I look down at my hands. My right palm has been bandaged, gauze and medical tape, neat and professional, covering the gash I got when I fell on the wet pavement outside the precinct. I don't remember anyone bandaging it. I remember the precinct. I remember the office. I remember the door, with no handle. I remember his voice, saying my name like he already knew it. After that, the sequence of events blurs. An officer with a kind face and no information, a different corridor, this room, the specific exhaustion of someone who has been running on cortisol and terror for so long that the body simply shuts down the moment it encounters a horizontal surface. I slept. I cannot believe I slept. The room is large. I make myself assess it properly. Paralegal habit. The brain wanting to catalog and organize even when the rest of me wants to sit on the floor and breathe into a paper bag. There's a window on the far wall, tall, facing east, and through it the city is doing its unremarkable morning business. Gray sky, the tops of buildings, a water tower in the middle distance. The glass is thick, double-paned, maybe triple. It doesn't rattle in the wind that I can see moving the distant flag on the building across the way. There's a wardrobe, a chair with a cashmere throw folded over the arm, a small table with a glass of water on it, ice cold still, which means someone came in after I fell asleep, which is a thought I file away under things to be disturbed by later. There's a door beside the wardrobe, slightly ajar. Bathroom. There's the door I came through. I cross to it, try the handle. It opens. That surprises me enough that I stand in the doorway for a full 3 seconds just holding the handle, waiting for something to stop me. An alarm. A lock engaging after the fact. A guard in the hallway with polite instructions. But the hallway beyond is simply a hallway. Carpeted in the same neutral palette as my room, with the same careful lighting, the same architectural ambition. There are 3 other doors along its length, all closed. At the far end, it opens into something larger. I can see the edge of a window, a different quality of space. I go back for my shoes. They are not where I left them. They have been replaced, on the floor beside the bed, with a pair of flat-soled slippers in soft, dark leather. My own shoes, the ones I lost on the pavement outside, are gone. My bag is on the chair. I check it immediately. Phone, keys, my wallet with its exact contents. Nothing added, nothing removed. Nothing, except that my phone has no signal. Not blocked. I know what a blocked phone looks like. The bars disappear. The SOS only message appears. This is different. I have full bars. I have Wi-Fi. I have every indication that my phone is functioning perfectly. It is only when I try to call Elena first, then my neighbor, then 911, working through the list with systematic determination, that the calls connect, ring once, twice, and then resolve into silence. Not a busy signal, not a recorded message. Silence. As if the calls are going somewhere and simply not arriving. I put the phone in my pocket. Put on the slippers because my stockings were ruined on the pavement and barefoot is worse. And then I walk down the hallway toward the light. The space at the end of the hallway is a living room. I stop at the threshold and take it in, because it requires taking in. It occupies what must be an entire floor, above the precinct, above the city, above whatever ordinary purpose this building is supposed to serve. The windows run floor to ceiling along two walls, looking out over the 9th District in every direction, and at this hour the city below is washed in the particular cold gray of early morning, all stone and steel, and the thin headlights of delivery trucks. It is, without qualification, the most beautiful room I have ever stood in, and it is absolutely, devastatingly wrong. Not wrong in its details. The details are impeccable, books on real shelves, arranged without obvious aesthetic calculation, which means someone actually reads them. A low table with a chess set mid-game. A kitchen along one wall that manages to look functional rather than decorative. Coffee already made, the smell of it reaching me from the doorway, and 2 cups on the counter, and Callum Voss sitting at the far end of the room with a newspaper and a cup and the specific ease of a man who has nowhere else to be. He looks up when I appear. He doesn't look surprised. He folds the newspaper, actually folds it, a deliberate and unhurried movement, and sets it on the table beside him. He's changed since last night. No suit jacket, just dark trousers and a shirt with the collar open, the cuffs turned back. He looks less like a police captain, and more like whatever he actually is, which is something I don't have a clean word for yet. Dangerous comes close. So does composed. So does the strange, particular quality of a man who has never once in his life needed to raise his voice to make himself understood. Miss Mercer. My name again. Same way, like a fact. I want to leave. No preamble, no good morning. I've had approximately 7 hours of sleep and 4 minutes of consciousness, and I'm already done with softening the edges. He tilts his head slightly. Not disagreement. Not refusal. Just consideration. Sit down first. That wasn't a request. Neither was that. He gestures toward the chair across from him. The movement is so unhurried, so utterly without urgency, that I feel the absurdity of my own adrenaline as a kind of insult. I sit, not because he told me to, because my legs are making the decision based on the information that I've been upright for 4 minutes, and my nervous system has been running a 6-month marathon, and there is, inconveniently, a cup of coffee on the table in front of me. He waits. I pick up the coffee. I hate that it's exactly the right temperature. His name, it turns out, is not something he offers. I already know it. I heard the officer say it last night, and I repeated it to myself in the dark. Quietly. The way you repeat an address you need to memorize. But he doesn't introduce himself, and I don't ask, because asking would imply I need something from him, and I am not yet ready to grant that. Instead, he talks. He talks the way he does everything, without excess, without drama, without any apparent awareness that the information he's conveying should, by any reasonable measure, be delivered with more ceremony than this. He sits with one ankle crossed over his knee and tells me, in a measured and almost conversational tone, that the men currently hunting me are employed by a trafficking and narcotics operation headquartered in the mid-Atlantic and presently reaching north, that they have been active in this city for approximately 18 months, that they are responsible for no fewer than 4 disappearances in the past year, 3 of which have since been confirmed as homicides, and 1 of which remains, technically, open. He pauses there briefly. Nathan Holt was the 4th? He looks at me with something that might be reassessment. No. Nathan Holt is the man who was supposed to be the 4th. I set down my coffee cup. What does that mean? It means the man you watched get shot survived. The sentence lands somewhere in the center of my chest and does something I can't immediately categorize. It should be relief. It should be, Nathan was my colleague, someone I'd eaten lunch with twice a week for 3 years, someone who knew how I took my coffee and had a photograph of his daughter on his desk, and was, by every measure available to me, a person I had liked and mourned. The relief doesn't come. What comes instead is something colder and more structural, like a floor beginning to tilt. You're saying he's alive. I'm saying he's alive, and that the men who staged his death are the same men who have been watching you for 6 months. He says it without inflection, without the warning signal that should precede information this large. Why would Nathan? I stop. The floor is doing something definitive now. I can feel the tilt becoming geometry, becoming implication. Nathan, who left work 3 weeks before the shooting with a vague excuse about personal matters. Nathan, who had removed his daughter's photograph from his desk the month prior. Nathan, who had been tense and distracted and unavailable in the ways that people are when they are managing something they cannot discuss. Nathan, whose death I witnessed from a fire escape, who I watched get shot and fall and did not report because I was terrified, and who has apparently, in exchange for something, given someone my name. He told them I saw it. Callum Voss says nothing, which is, I understand, a confirmation. I put both hands flat on the table and look at the city out the window for a moment. The delivery trucks, the gray sky, the water tower with its peeling paint. A completely ordinary morning in a completely ordinary city, seen from a room that is neither. And you. My voice is level. I'm proud of it. You're not a police captain. A pause. The captain of the 9th Precinct is a man named Gerald Haas. He's been captain for 11 years. He'll be captain until he retires, which he plans to do in 3 years in order to spend more time with his grandchildren. He says it so precisely, with such careful informational completeness, that it takes me a moment to understand what he's saying. That Gerald Haas exists. That Gerald Haas is a real person. That Gerald Haas was not, last night, in that office. Then who the hell are you? He picks up his coffee cup, takes a drink, sets it back down. Someone who got there first. The silence that follows is not comfortable. It is not meant to be comfortable. It is the silence of a person who is entirely at ease with ambiguity, and a person who is not, sitting on opposite sides of a table, and the gap between them is not just distance. It's the specific distance between a trap and the thing inside it. He explains the terms. I listen without interrupting, because interrupting would cost me information, and information is the only currency I currently possess. He speaks precisely. I am not, he says, a prisoner. I may move through the floor freely, the hallway, the living room, the kitchen. There is a secondary room, a study, he calls it, that I should feel free to use. There are books, a television, a connection to the internet that is functional and monitored. The monitoring, he says, with the same tone one might use to mention the recycling schedule, is not negotiable. I will not be harmed. He says this once, clearly, without the emphasis that would make it sound like a reassurance. He says it the way he says everything, as a simple statement of fact, take it or leave it, subject to no further elaboration. I will not be permitted to leave. The men hunting me are not, he explains, going to stop. They have my photograph, my address, my employer, and now 6 months of accumulated data on my movements. The photograph in my mailbox was the last warning. The car last night was not a coincidence. If I walk out of this building, the question is not whether they will find me but how long I will last once they do. He says this too without emphasis, just geometry. A word problem. And if I stay? Then you're under my protection until the situation is resolved. What does that mean, resolved? Something moves behind his eyes. A door opening and closing very quickly. It means what it means. I look at him for a long moment. At his hands relaxed on the arm of the chair. At the set of his jaw, which is the only place where something tight and controlled lives beneath the ease. He means someone will die. Possibly several someones. He means that the men hunting me will stop, not because they have been persuaded or arrested or talked into reasonableness, but because they will no longer be capable of continuing. He means this is a world with a different vocabulary for resolution. And this man, this person who occupies police buildings without being police, who uses words like protection with the serene confidence of someone who has never once said a thing he didn't mean. This man is the wall between me and that world. I reach for my coffee again. I need my laptop, it's at my apartment. He nods as if this is entirely expected. I'll have it brought. And I need to contact someone, a friend, let them know I'm alive, that I'm alive. Something in his expression shifts, not sympathy exactly. More like the specific acknowledgement of a person who understands that information is not always available, and that the absence of it has weight. Who? Her name is Elena Reyes. She lives on... I know where Elena Reyes lives. He says it quietly. And then, before I can process the shape of that sentence, what it means that he knows her name, what it means that he was waiting for it, he picks up the newspaper again, opens it to where he left off, and says, I'll reach out to her this afternoon. The conversation is over. He has ended it with the same economy he applies to everything else. Precisely, without drama, without giving me any room to identify the edge of the thing that just happened. I carry my coffee to the window and stand looking out at the city. The delivery trucks are gone. The gray has shifted to a pale, flat white. Somewhere below, the precinct is opening for the day. Officers arriving. The machinery of law enforcement grinding into motion around the base of this building, completely unaware of what lives above it. I turn my phone over in my pocket. Full bars. Wi-Fi connected. Every app functional. I open Elena's contact. Press call. It rings twice. And when the line connects, when the voice on the other end says hello with the specific music of someone I've known for 11 years, with the cadence that is hers and no one else's, I exhale fully for the first time since last night. Elena, it's me. I'm okay. I just need you to... Silence. Not silence like a bad connection. Silence like the pause before something. And then a voice that is not Elena's. Male, unhurried, the particular smoothness of someone who has been waiting. Hello, Miss Mercer. I go still. Behind me, I hear Callum Voss set down his newspaper. I've been hoping you'd call. The room is very quiet. The city is very far away. And somewhere between Elena's contact and this stranger's voice is a shape I cannot yet name, but which has the specific weight and geometry of something that has been true for a long time and is only now making itself known. I lower the phone. I don't turn around. I can't, quite yet. But I hear him stand up behind me. And what he says, quietly, into the silence of the room is worse than any threat would have been. I'm sorry. Chapter 2. The Rules of Captivity. He doesn't explain. That is the first thing I understand about Callum Voss on this second morning. He does not explain himself. He offers information the way other people offer facts about the weather. When it's useful, when the timing serves some purpose, I cannot yet decode, and not before. He had said, I'm sorry, and then he had stood there while I processed the shape of that apology, and when I finally turned around from the window, when I finally faced him with the phone still warm in my hand and the stranger's voice still printed on the inside of my skull, what I found in his expression was neither guilt nor indifference. It was patience, which is, I am coming to understand, far more frightening than either. I didn't ask him about Elena that night. I couldn't. There are questions you need to be ready for, and I was not ready, and I know myself well enough. 5 years of working in legal environments where emotion is a liability, where showing what you feel costs you ground you cannot get back, to understand that I needed to wait until I could ask the question without anything audible in my voice. I ate the dinner that appeared on the kitchen counter at 7 o'clock, left there by someone I neither saw nor heard, which is its own category of unsettling. Thai food, from somewhere good, still hot, with the particular fragrance of lemongrass and chili that normally I love. I ate 4 bites and threw the rest away, and I stood at the window while the city changed from dusk to dark, and I thought about everything I knew and everything I didn't, and I constructed in my mind the kind of legal brief I used to draft for the attorneys at Holt & Associates. Facts, known, unknown, probable, speculative. By the time I went to bed, I had a framework. By the time I woke up, it had already started to collapse. The study is at the far end of the hallway, past the room I've been given, and the 2 closed doors I haven't yet opened. He told me I could use it. He said this with the same precision he applies to everything, gesturing toward it as one might gesture toward a feature of the house that is simply available, like a washing machine or a second bathroom. The door opens without protest. It is, like everything else in this space, not what I expected, not a crime lord's office, not a room full of safes and weapons and the machinery of whatever operation lives below this floor. It is a working study in the most ordinary sense. A desk, a computer, bookshelves that run floor to ceiling on 2 walls and contain a combination of legal texts and what appears to be actual literature, dictionaries, history. 3 shelves of what I identify after a moment as case law journals, and a row of philosophy that someone has read because the spines are cracked. I stand in the doorway for a moment, adjusting. Then I go to the bookshelf and pick up the closest thing to hand, a copy of Marcus Aurelius, which strikes me as either deeply ironic or exactly right for a man like this. And I sit down in the chair at the desk because the chair by the window has the right angle of morning light and the wrong angle of sight lines, and I open the book and I read 3 sentences and retain none of them. My eyes move to the desk. There is a folder on it, manila, standard size, the kind that holds documents rather than photographs. It is not hidden. It is not locked. It sits in the upper left quadrant of the desk with the particular placement of something that was set there to be returned to and has not yet been returned to, the kind of presence a file has when someone has been working and stepped away. I look at it for 11 seconds. I count them. Then I open it. There are maybe 40 pages inside. The top sheet is a printout, a surveillance photograph, grainy, time-stamped, showing the exterior of a building I recognize as the office block where Holt & Associates had its offices. The timestamp reads, 8 months ago. In the lower right corner of the photograph, just visible through the glass of the lobby, is a face. Nathan Holt's face. With a man I don't recognize. Standing close, not casually. The posture of an exchange. Something passed between them, hand to hand, too small to identify. I turn the page. Another photograph. Nathan at a restaurant. A different man across the table. A man whose face is partially obscured by the angle, but whose jacket has the kind of lapels that belong to someone with money and a specific tailor. The timestamp on this one is 10 months ago. I turn another page, and another. The file is a surveillance record. Months of it, meticulous and dense, tracking Nathan Holt's movements, associations, contacts. There are photocopies of what appear to be wire transfer records. There are printed emails with redactions and a handwritten note in a margin that reads, "In writing I don't recognize, small and precise, confirmed secondary." I reach a page near the middle of the file and stop. It is a list, 10 names, 8 of them I don't recognize. 1 of them is Nathan Holt. The 10th is mine. My full name, spelled correctly, with my address beneath it, and beneath the address a single notation in the same handwriting. Witnessed 10/14. Unconfirmed disclosure. Monitor. October 14th. The night I was on the fire escape. I closed the file very carefully. I put it back in the upper left quadrant of the desk, at exactly the angle I found it. I pick up Marcus Aurelius. I look at the page without reading it. And then I stand up, and I walk back down the hallway to find Callum Voss, because I have found the thing I was not looking for, and it has answered 1 question and opened 10 more, and the patience I assembled last night is, at this particular moment, completely gone. He is in the kitchen. This, I am beginning to understand, is where he defaults when he is not actively occupied. The kitchen, with coffee, engaged in some activity that looks like stillness, but contains within it the specific alertness of a person who is never entirely off watch. Today he is reading something on his phone, standing at the counter with a cup in one hand, and he looks up when I come in with the expression of a man who has been expecting this and is not particularly alarmed by its arrival. I set the file on the counter between us. He looks at it, looks at me. Neither of us speaks for a moment. My name is in there. He sets down his phone. Yes. You were watching Nathan Holt before any of this happened. Yes. You were watching me. The silence that follows is not the silence of a man deciding whether to lie. It is the silence of a man deciding how much truth to deploy and in what order. I was monitoring everyone connected to Holt & Associates from the moment we identified Nathan Holt as a contact for the Reyes operation. That included support staff, paralegals, associates. It included you. He says it with the same matter-of-fact directness he uses for everything else, and this quality, the complete absence of defensiveness, is more disorienting than anger would have been. I was prepared for deflection. I am not entirely prepared for this. For how long? Not a question. He seems to understand it as one anyway. 4 months before October 14th. 4 months. I had been photographed, tracked, logged in a file by a man I had never met for 4 months before the night I watched someone get shot on a fire escape and said nothing to anyone. The irony of this is not lost on me. I pull out the stool at the counter and sit down, because the alternative is standing there processing this while he watches, and I am not willing to let him see the full shape of what I'm feeling. I fold my hands on the counter. Old habit. The pose I adopted in every difficult meeting, every deposition prep session, every conversation with a client who needed to believe I was more composed than I was. So you knew I was there that night. We knew someone was on the fire escape. We confirmed your identity afterward. And you still didn't approach me. No. Why? He picks up his coffee cup, takes a drink. In the small pause while he does this, I watch his face and find, as I found last night, very little to read there. He is not withholding exactly. He is simply dense, opaque, in the way that deep water is opaque, not because it's hiding something, but because the light doesn't reach. Because approaching you would have required explaining things I wasn't prepared to explain, and because in the weeks after October 14th, there was no threat to you. Holt had told them someone was there but couldn't confirm it was you specifically. You were safe as long as you stayed quiet and stayed ordinary. He says this last sentence with a precision that lands like a stone into water. Stayed ordinary. And then I stopped being ordinary. And then someone in Holt's network identified you and it stopped being a theoretical risk. I look at the file on the counter between us. You left this out. He doesn't pretend not to understand what I'm asking. I wanted you to find it. The admission sits in the air between us. I turn it over. I look at its underside. You wanted me to understand that I was already in the system before I walked through that door. I wanted you to understand that your situation has a history you didn't choose, that this isn't something that happened to you in one night, and that the version of events where you're simply an innocent bystander, he pauses, not for effect, for accuracy, is incomplete. The word incomplete is doing a great deal of work in that sentence. I know what he means. I have known, in the part of myself that is not allowed to speak at volume, since the morning after October 14th. I made a choice that night. I watched something and I said nothing, not because I was too shocked to act, but because I was afraid, and the fear was rational, and I chose it consciously. I went home and I locked my door, and I told myself I didn't have enough information, and both of those things were true, and neither of them was the real reason. The real reason is that I was a paralegal at a small firm in a city that does not protect people who speak inconveniently, and I had seen what happened to people who spoke inconveniently, and I chose my life over Nathan Holt's, and Nathan Holt was apparently alive anyway, so perhaps the calculus worked out, but the choice I made was still the choice I made. I breathe in, I breathe out. You're telling me I'm complicit. I'm telling you you're human. There's a difference. Not legally. We're not talking about legally. He says this with something that might, in another person, be called gentleness. In him it arrives differently, less softness than precision, as if he has identified the exact location of a bruise and has decided, this once, not to press it. I look at him across the counter. What do you want from me? He sets down his cup. Right now? I want you to stop looking at the door every 40 minutes and start thinking about the fact that you're safer here than anywhere else you could be. There will be time for everything else. I look at the door. I had not realized I was doing it. I redirect my gaze deliberately to his face. And Elena. Something moves through him. I feel it before I see it. A shift in the quality of his stillness. The way a body registers something difficult before the face decides what to do with it. I'll tell you about Elena when I know more. That's not an answer. No, it's the truth, which is a different thing. I want to push. I want to put both hands flat on the counter and lean forward and make him tell me right now, today, in this kitchen, what he knows about my closest friend and why a stranger answered her phone and what the shape of the thing is that I am only just beginning to see the edge of. But I am also, for better or worse, someone who understands that information obtained by force is often incomplete. That the thing you push someone into telling you is not always the whole truth, only the part they could get to under pressure. So I pick up his file, and I carry it back to the study, and I sit in the chair by the window with Marcus Aurelius open in my lap, and I read. And I think. And at no point, for the entire afternoon, do I look at the door. My laptop arrives at 5 o'clock. It is brought by a man I have not seen before, mid-30s, unremarkable in the specific way of people who are professionally unremarkable, wearing clothes that have no identifying features. He sets the bag on the entry table without coming further into the space, nods once, and leaves. I listen to the elevator descend. Then, I sit down with my laptop on the kitchen counter, and I do the thing I have been trained by 5 years of legal work never to do in the presence of someone else's documentation. I use my professional access. I am still a paralegal, technically. My employment at Holt & Associates was never formally terminated. The firm is suspended pending investigation, has been since October 15th, and I am on indefinite administrative leave, which means my access credentials have not yet been revoked. I know this because I checked, 6 weeks ago, from my apartment, because I had the particular anxiety of someone who does not know whether they still have a job or are being investigated, or both. The credentials still work. I open the firm's document management system. I know what I'm looking for. The paralegal's advantage is this. They see everything. Not the headline cases, not the final arguments, but the underlying documentation. The billing records, the correspondence logs, the file notes that attorneys dictate at 10 o'clock at night when they're tired and less careful. I had been Nathan Holt's primary paralegal for 2 years. I had organized his files. I had prepared his correspondence. I had on more than one occasion noticed things that did not add up and filed them in the place where inconvenient observations go when you are not in a position to act on them. I find the client file I am looking for in 20 minutes. It is flagged inactive, which it shouldn't be, because the case attached to it was still open as of October. I open it. Navigate to the correspondence log. Find, near the bottom, a series of emails dated 2 weeks before the shooting. The client is listed as a holding company. A shell, I can tell from the structure of it. The kind of entity that exists on paper and nowhere else. That is registered in a state with minimal disclosure requirements and attached to a parent that is similarly structured. I have seen this pattern before in legitimate tax work and in other kinds of work, and I know the difference. But the emails. The emails are between Nathan and someone identified only by an email address, a generic provider, no name attached. The content is coded. I can see that immediately. The language too deliberate, too careful, the kind of communication between people who understand they are being monitored and have arranged their vocabulary accordingly. But I am also someone who has read legal correspondence for 5 years. I know what coded language covers when it is covering the transfer of something of value in exchange for something of value. I read the last email in the chain. And then I sit very still, because the last email is dated October 12th, 2 days before the shooting, and its final line, stripped of its careful language, stripped of the corporate architecture that surrounds it, means one thing: the exchange has been confirmed. The other party has agreed to the terms. The handover will proceed as discussed. The handover. Nathan hadn't been killed. He had been paid. And the thing he had handed over, the thing that had been exchanged, that had prompted 6 months of surveillance, and a photograph in my mailbox, and a car following me through the rain, and a stranger's voice on Elena's phone. I hear footsteps in the hallway. I close the laptop. I close it too fast, with the particular guilty speed of someone who has found something they were not supposed to find and is now deciding in real time whether to reveal it. I press my palms flat on the lid and look up as Callum appears in the kitchen doorway. He reads me immediately. I see it happen. The slight adjustment of his attention, the way his eyes move from my face to the laptop and back. What did you find? Not a question. I could lie. I am good at composure, and I have had enough practice with difficult information that I can, most of the time, absorb it without showing the seams. But I think of the file he left on the desk for me to find, and I think of what he said about the difference between information obtained by force and information offered freely, and I make a decision that surprises me slightly. I open the laptop. I turn it around. He looks at the screen. I watch his face while he reads. He does not react, or rather, he reacts in the way he always reacts, which is to say that the interior of him becomes, if anything, more still, a specific, concentrated quiet that I am beginning to be able to distinguish from simply stillness. When he looks up, there is something new in his expression, not surprise, something more like recognition, and beneath it, something that takes me a moment to identify. He is reassessing me. You still have access to the firm's system. Nobody revoked my credentials, and you knew what to look for. I say nothing. Which is, I realize a moment too late, itself an answer. He reaches past me. His arm comes within 4 inches of mine, and I am aware of this, with the specific, inconvenient awareness that seems to operate independently of everything else my brain is doing. He closes the laptop. He slides it back toward me. Don't access those files again tonight. Why? Because the firm's system is monitored, not by us, by someone whose interest in what you just read would make your situation considerably more complicated than it currently is. He says it quietly. He does not touch the laptop again. And then he does something I have not seen him do before. He sits on the stool across the counter, the same one I occupied this morning, lowering himself into it with the ease of someone who has made a decision that is larger than the gesture. He rests one arm on the counter. He looks at me. You found the handover reference? Yes. Then you understand that what Nathan Holt sold wasn't a secret about a case. It wasn't testimony or documentation or anything that can be contained. He pauses. Deliberate. He is doing the thing again, calibrating, measuring what order to put things in. I wait. I have learned in the past 36 hours that waiting is the one tactic that reliably costs him something. What Nathan Holt sold, he says at last, was a list of names, people connected to this operation. People with relationships, associations, and evidence that certain things exist. People who, if they spoke, could do significant damage. I am already where he is going. But I let him arrive there. Your name was on it. The kitchen is very quiet. The city does its indifferent work outside the window. How many others? 11, including you. Are the others? He meets my eyes, holds them. And that is, when I understand, in a way that bypasses language entirely and lands somewhere more fundamental, that the question I was about to ask has an answer he will not give me tonight. That the 11 names and their current circumstances are information he is holding at a specific distance for a specific reason. That knowing might change something he is not ready to change. I close my mouth. I look at the closed laptop. I look at him. I want to know what happened to the others. I know. That's not an answer. No, he agrees. It's the truth, which is a different thing. He used that line this morning, I remember it. He is using it again now, not carelessly, but precisely, the way you use a phrase that has proven useful. I stand up, I take the laptop, I walk to the hallway without looking back, and I hear him remain at the counter as I go, and I stop at the threshold of my room, and I stand there for a moment with my hand on the doorframe. Tomorrow, I say without turning around, you'll tell me about Elena. A pause, long enough to be deliberate. Tomorrow, he says. I go into my room, I close the door. I sit on the bed with the laptop on my knees, and I look at the ceiling and I think about 11 names on a list, and what happens to people whose names appear in the wrong places. And I think about Elena, and I think about Nathan Holt alive somewhere, arranging the terms of his own survival. And I think about Callum Voss sitting in a kitchen above a precinct he does not run, in a city he apparently does, telling me the truth in pieces and apologizing for the parts he hasn't told me yet. I think about the way he sat down. He didn't have to do that. Sitting across from someone is a different thing than standing over them. It means something, structurally. It is a signal that a person gives, consciously or not, about what kind of conversation they think they're having. I hold on to that. I turn it over. And somewhere in the city below, in a building I don't know the address of, Detective Ray Okafor, the one honest cop in the 9th Precinct, the man I saw through the glass of the processing room on the night I arrived, the one who looked at me with something in his expression that was neither calculation nor pity, is pushing a note under the wrong door. He doesn't know the floor has been rearranged. The note goes to the room beside mine, Callum's room. In the morning, before I am awake, Callum will find it. And the note will say, she needs to know what Holt sold, all of it, before Tuesday. Because on Tuesday, they make their move. Chapter 3. Learning the Architecture. The plan takes shape on the third morning, before I am fully awake. It comes together the way good plans always do, not in one burst of inspiration, but in the quiet accumulation of observed details. The elevator that requires a key fob for the upper floors, but whose service shaft is accessed from the stairwell, which does not. The stairwell, which I located on my second full day here, by the simple method of opening every door in the hallway, and noting which one exhaled the faint, mechanical smell of a building's hidden infrastructure. The service shaft, which I have not yet seen but which I know, from 3 years of reviewing building permits at Holt & Associates, on behalf of clients with real estate complications, descends independently of the main elevator system. I know this building, not because I have been here before, but because I know buildings, how they are structured. Where the load-bearing walls are, and therefore where the non-load-bearing ones are, which means where the passages can be cut, the walls can be thin, the spaces between rooms can be traversed. It is the kind of knowledge that accumulates laterally, through adjacency, through years of handling documentation for people who needed to know how their properties worked. I lie in bed and run the sequence. Stairwell door, unlocked, confirmed on day 2. 3 flights down to the building's administrative level, which I know exists because I have heard people below us, the specific acoustic signature of an office, keyboards and chairs, and the occasional phone. Administrative level to service corridor, unknown but consistent with standard building code, which requires egress from service infrastructure at each occupied floor. Service corridor to exterior, probable, via loading dock or utility exit, neither of which will be monitored the way the front entrance is. Total time from my room to the street, 8 minutes, optimistically, 10 if the service corridor is complicated. I put on my shoes. The slippers he provided are quieter, and for a moment I consider them, and then I dismiss the consideration because choosing his shoes over my instinct is already a small capitulation I am not prepared to make. I lace my own shoes, the ones that appeared in my room 2 days ago from my apartment, and I tie them with the specific, slightly too tight pull of someone who plans to move quickly. The hallway is empty. It is always empty. I have never seen anyone else on this floor besides Callum, and the people who appear silently to deliver food and retrieve dishes and perform the invisible maintenance of a space that runs without apparent effort. Whether these people have instructions about me, I do not know. Whether my movement through the hallway at 6:45 in the morning registers on some monitor somewhere, I do not know. I move anyway. The stairwell door is where I left it. Third door on the right, the one that smells like machinery. The handle turns. The door opens onto a narrow concrete stairwell with metal treads and a single fluorescent fixture at each landing, the kind that hums. I let the door close behind me. The hum of the fluorescent nearest me is a G-flat, slightly sharp. I note this the way I note everything, as a fact, as a data point, as the texture of where I am. I go down. First landing, second. The sound of the building changes as I descend. Less the quiet of expensive insulation, more the ambient noise of a structure that is actively occupied and used. On the third landing I hear, faintly, a phone ringing and being answered. Below the precinct's operational floor, then, I keep going. The fourth landing has a door. I open it, and I am in a corridor I recognize. I am in the corridor I walked through on my first night, the one the officer led me down after I came through the front door, the one with the scuff marks on the walls and the motivational poster someone half tore down. I am, somehow, on the building's main administrative floor, which means my 8-minute estimate was off, and the geometry of my plan was off, and what I thought was a service stairwell appears to be a secondary route back into the very building I am trying to leave. I stand in the hallway for a moment. A uniformed officer passes at the far end, glancing up, glancing away. He does not stop. He does not react to my presence with anything that indicates surprise or alarm. Which means I understand that my presence here is either expected or unremarkable, or both. I turn around, I go back up the stairs. I push through the door, onto the floor I came from, and I walk down the hallway to the kitchen. He is sitting at the kitchen table this time, not the counter. There is a difference. The counter is a working position, upright and lateral. The table is a seated one, which implies either leisure or an intention to remain. He has coffee and a legal pad, and he is writing something in the small, precise script I recognize from the margin note in the surveillance file. He looks up when I come in. He takes me in, shoes laced, hair that has not been brushed yet, the particular quality of someone who has been moving with purpose and has arrived somewhere other than intended. His expression does not change, but something in his posture settles, infinitesimally, into something that might in another person be called relief. The stairwell routes back to the administrative floor. I say, not a complaint, an observation. Yes, he says. He sets down his pen. He reaches to the side, to the chair beside him, and he picks up something I did not see from the doorway. He places it on the table facing me. It is a floor plan, printed on plain paper, the kind you produce from a building management system, showing all 12 floors of the structure in layered cross-section. It is annotated. He has circled 3 locations in pencil, one on floor 4, one on the building's basement level, one on the exterior north wall of the second floor, and beside each circle he has written a single word. The word, in each case, is unwatched. I look at the floor plan. I look at him. You're showing me the exits. I'm showing you 3 places where the camera coverage has gaps, and the human patrol rotation leaves a window of approximately 4 minutes, twice a day, 6:15 in the morning and 11:40 at night. The 6:15. I look at the clock above the kitchen counter. It reads 6:52. I missed it by 37 minutes. Why, I say. He picks up his coffee. A long pause. The specific length of a man who does not speak casually, and is therefore taking the time to say what he means. rather than what is easy. Because I want you to stay. And I'd like you to stay because you've decided to, not because you believe you can't leave. Those are different things. I know the difference. I suspect you do too. The sentence arrives with no particular weight in his voice, which somehow gives it more. I pull out the chair across from him. I sit. I look at the floor plan. 3 exits. Real ones, not the elaborate false out of a stairwell that routes you in a circle. Given to me across a table with coffee, at 6:52 in the morning, by a man who could simply have installed another lock. I feel, very distantly, the floor of my framework shifting. Not collapsing, I am too careful for collapse. But adjusting. You read Okafor's note, I say. A beat. Yes. He said Tuesday. He did. Is he right? Callum sets his cup down. He looks at me across the table with the direct, undecorated attention he gives everything. Yes. Tuesday is when the Reyes network moves on the remaining names from the list. They've been working through it. You're the last one they don't have a location for. I process this. How many? I say, and don't say you'll tell me later. The silence is shorter this time. He has been deciding this since Tuesday arrived, in Okafor's note, I think. He has been deciding what to tell me and when, and the floor plan on the table is part of that decision, and I am beginning to understand that the way Callum Voss communicates is not withholding exactly but sequencing. He gives you what you can use when you can use it, and the judgment about when is the one place where his control is absolute. But he told me about the exits. 7, he says. 7 of the 11 names have been addressed. Addressed. I look at the floor plan. I do not ask what addressed means. I already know, and asking would require him to say it, and I am not sure I want the word in the room. That leaves 3, besides me, 2, you and 1 other who is currently in a location the network hasn't confirmed. And the 3rd. He meets my eyes. Okafor. The morning settles into something that is not quite ordinary but has the shape of ordinary, the way certain silences do when they are shared between 2 people who have reached, without discussing it, a temporary armistice. I go to the study. He goes to wherever he goes. I have not seen his bedroom, have not seen most of what this floor contains beyond the rooms I have been given access to, and I find that I am less curious about the hidden geography than I was on the first day. Less because it doesn't matter, and more because the floor plan on the kitchen table has recalibrated something in me. He showed me the exits. That is a form of architecture too. Not walls and staircases, but the arrangement of what is known and what is withheld. And for the first time since I arrived, I have a clearer picture of where the doors are. I take Marcus Aurelius from the shelf. I sit in the chair. I read, this time, with actual attention. Around noon he comes into the study. He does not announce himself, and I do not hear him coming. He moves the way this entire space moves, quietly, without the particular weight that most people carry when they walk. I become aware of him when I look up from the page and find him at the bookshelf opposite me, scanning the titles with his head at a slight angle. He has changed into different clothes. Dark trousers, a gray shirt with the sleeves rolled back to the forearm. No jacket. He looks more like a person and less like a portrait of a person, which is disorienting in a way I did not anticipate. He pulls a book from the shelf. Opens it. Does not sit. We stay like that for a while, him standing at the shelf, me in the chair, the city outside doing its quiet midday business. The specific quality of a room in which 2 people are present and not talking, and have decided, without saying so, that this is acceptable. At some point he crosses to the desk. He sits in the desk chair, which puts him at a roughly 45-degree angle to me, close enough that I am aware of him as a physical presence. The warmth of another body in a room, the occasional sound of a page turning, without being directly in my line of sight. I go back to Marcus Aurelius. I read the same paragraph 4 times. It is not that I am thinking about him exactly. It is more that the room has acquired a kind of charge that makes focus difficult, the way rooms do in the moments before a thunderstorm when the pressure changes, and the air becomes dense and full. I am aware of the distance between the arm of my chair and the edge of the desk, approximately 2 feet. I am aware that if I reached my arm out fully, I would be reaching toward him, and I am aware that I am noting this, and I am aware that noting it is a different thing from wanting to act on it, but is not entirely separate from it either. I turn a page. He says, without looking up from whatever he is reading, "You've been on the same page for 8 minutes. I am so startled by the fact of him speaking, not the content, just the fact, in this silence, that I look up before I can compose my expression into something other than what it is. He is watching me, just looking, the way he always looks, steadily, without apology, with that quality of attention that is impossible to deflect because it has no aggression in it. Just attention, just him, watching me, with something in his eyes that I have not seen there before. Not calculation, not assessment. Something quieter. I was thinking, I say. I know. I close the book. I set it on the arm of the chair. I look at him across the 2 feet of desk edge and chair arm that separate us. What are you reading? He turns the book so I can see the cover without passing it across the space between us. It is a history of the Byzantine Empire, which is not what I would have guessed, and is somehow, because of that, more revealing than what I would have guessed. Why, I say. Because they held an empire together for 1,000 years after everyone expected it to collapse. Most people don't last a decade. I want to know how they thought. I look at him. He looks at me. The 2 feet between us is not shorter, but it feels different from before. Less like distance, and more like the specific tension of a thing that has not yet decided what it is. I reach past him for the coffee cup I left on the desk this morning. My arm passes within 4 inches of his. I feel the warmth of him before I feel the ceramic of the cup. A small, involuntary registration, the body cataloging proximity before the mind can intercede. I take the cup. I sit back. I hold it with both hands, even though it is cold. He has gone very still. Not the composed stillness he wears like a coat. Something different. The specific, controlled stillness of a person who is expending effort. The kind of stillness that is the opposite of absence, because absence requires nothing, and this requires everything. I look at my cold coffee. He looks at the desk. Neither of us says anything for a long moment. Okafor, I say finally, when did you know he was honest? A breath. An adjustment. The room becomes the room again. 3rd week of his employment at the 9th, he tried to report a bribe he'd been offered. The report was intercepted before it reached anyone who could act on it. I intercepted it. And you didn't have him removed. I kept him instead. An honest cop in a compromised precinct is an asset you don't squander. He says it practically, without sentiment. But I hear, underneath the practicality, something else. Something that functions like respect, which from this man is not a small thing. He's on the list because someone in the network identified him as a risk. He filed a complaint 6 months ago, before I could bury it completely. The complaint was dismissed, but his name was logged. They've been watching him since then. I hold the cold coffee cup. I look at the floor plan, which I have carried with me from the kitchen and set on the edge of the desk, without fully registering that I did so. If Tuesday is when they move, I say, then we have 4 days. He looks at me, not at the floor plan, at me. Yes. I want to be useful. I have access to the firm's document system. I have 5 years of paralegal knowledge of this case's underlying documentation. I want to do something with that instead of sitting in this chair reading about Byzantium. A pause, long. The specific length of someone reconsidering a position. What do you need? He says. And those 4 words, the shift they represent from I will tell you what to do to what do you need, is, I think, the moment things between us change direction. Not dramatically, not with any outward signal. But something turns. I spend the afternoon in the study with my laptop and access to two things: the firm's document management system, which I use carefully and briefly, and a set of corporate registry databases that Callum's people apparently maintain and which he grants me access to without comment, simply passing me a login on a piece of paper, as if this is an entirely normal transaction. It takes me 3 hours to build a cleaner picture of what Nathan Holt sold. The list of names was the visible part. Underneath it, in the corporate architecture that I am professionally equipped to read, is something more structural, a map of relationships. Who knew whom? Who had documented knowledge of which transactions? Whose testimony, combined with whose documentation, would constitute a prosecutable chain of evidence against the Reyes Network's upper management. The list was not random, it was precise. Whoever compiled it understood the legal infrastructure around the network better than the network itself seemed to. They had identified not just witnesses, but a specific combination of witnesses whose collective knowledge formed a complete evidentiary picture. I write this down. I write down the shape of it, not the names, but the structure, the logic, the reason each person on that list was chosen. I write it in the legal brief format I have used for 5 years because it is the clearest way I know to organize what I am seeing. When I bring it to Callum at 5 o'clock, he reads it without speaking. He reads all of it, carefully, which takes longer than I expect, because I have written more than I realized. When he finishes, he looks up. The expression on his face is not what I expected. It is not gratitude, which would be condescending. It is not surprise, which would be insulting. It is the specific expression of a person who has just received information that changes the geometry of a problem they have been working on for a long time. "You understand what this means," he says. "It means the list wasn't compiled by Holt. He didn't have the legal knowledge to structure it this way. Someone gave him the names and told him what they represented. He was the delivery mechanism, not the architect. Which means someone inside the network's own legal infrastructure built the list. Someone who understood prosecutorial strategy. Someone who was building, whether they knew it or not, a case. He is quiet. Quiet in the way he is quiet when something is landing, when the information is finding its place in a larger structure he holds entirely in his head. Or someone who was trying to be found, I say slowly. Someone who wanted the network dismantled and structured the list as a blueprint. Gave it to Holt, knowing it would eventually reach someone who could use it. I stop. Someone on the inside who was trying to give you the tools to destroy them. He doesn't confirm this. He doesn't need to. The silence is the confirmation. I look at the brief in his hands. Who? He sets the brief on the table. He picks up his phone. He reads something on it. Something that arrived while I was talking, or perhaps while I was writing and he held until now. He holds it out to me. It is a photograph. Grainy, taken at distance, through what looks like the window of a restaurant or a bar. 2 people at a table. One of them I don't recognize. The other is Elena. Elena, with her dark hair pulled back and a glass of wine in front of her, and an expression I have never once seen on her face in 11 years of friendship. Not the Elena who calls me on Tuesday evenings and remembers my mother's birthday and held my hand in the waiting room of a doctor's office 3 years ago when I got news I wasn't prepared for. This Elena is not afraid. This Elena is not in danger. This Elena is negotiating. I look at the photograph for a long time. Then I look at Callum. When was this taken? 8 months ago, before October, before the shooting, before you, before me. He says it with a precision that implies it is not incidental information, but a specific orientation. These are the events, before you became part of this. This is the sequence you were inserted into. I set the phone down. I think about the stranger's voice on Elena's line. I think about, "I'm sorry," delivered quietly in a morning kitchen. I think about the way he has been telling me things in sequence, in order, calibrating what I can hold and when. He has been waiting for me to be ready for this. She's the one who gave them my name. He doesn't answer. He doesn't have to. I breathe in, I breathe out. I look at the city outside the window, all its ordinary evening business, its lit windows and its moving cars, its complete indifference to the specific, private architecture of betrayal. The worst part is not the anger. The anger is clean. The anger has shape and weight and is something I can hold. The worst part is that even now, even with the photograph in front of me, some part of me is trying to find the explanation that makes Elena a victim rather than a participant. I know this about myself. I have been doing it for 11 years whenever she did something that required explanation. I have always been better at understanding other people's damage than at protecting myself from it. Callum is watching me. He is not saying I told you so. He is not saying anything. He is simply present, which is, I am finding, his particular form of attention in difficult moments. Not commentary, not comfort, just the fact of being there. You could have told me this on the first night. Yes. Why didn't you? He is quiet for a moment. And then he says something that I will think about later, in the dark. When the city has gone quiet, and the building has settled into its nighttime sounds, and I am lying on my back, looking at the coffered ceiling. Because I needed you to trust me first, even a little, and you didn't yet. And information you receive from someone you don't trust lands differently than information you receive from someone you do. I didn't want this to land wrong. I look at him. He looks back. Outside the study doors, somewhere in the building below, someone slips an envelope under a door. It has my name on it. It is in the handwriting of a man named Okafor, and it says 3 things. That he is sorry he missed the original target, that he has new information about who compiled the list, and that if she wants to know the truth about Elena Reyes, the whole truth, not the version she's been told, she should ask Voss what Elena was promised. It slides fully under the door, and it sits there, waiting, 3 rooms away. I don't know it exists yet, but Callum does. And in a moment, when he excuses himself, when he steps into the hallway, for reasons he does not explain, he will pick it up. He will read it. He will stand in the hallway for exactly 4 seconds. And then he will fold it once and put it in his pocket. He will come back to the study. He will sit down across from me. He will look at me with those steady, unrevealing eyes. And he will say nothing. Not yet. Chapter 4. What She Saw. Monday arrives the way Mondays always arrive when something is about to happen, too quickly, with a quality of light that seems ordinary and isn't. I am in the study when Callum appears in the doorway at 8:47. I know the exact time because I have been watching the clock with the particular focus of someone who is aware that Tuesday is tomorrow and has not yet been told what tomorrow will look like. He is in a suit today. The first time I have seen him in one since the night I walked into the precinct. Dark charcoal, white shirt, no tie, the collar open by 1 button. He looks like what he is, which is to say he looks like power that has chosen, for this morning, to wear its formal clothes. He says, I need you to come with me. 4 days ago I would have asked why. 3 days ago I would have negotiated. This morning I close the laptop and stand up and say where. He looks at me for a moment. Something moves in his expression, brief, quickly controlled, that I am learning to identify as the closest thing he does to surprise. Downstairs, we're using the identification room. I follow him into the elevator. He uses the key fob, the same building, the same infrastructure I explored 3 mornings ago, but today accessed from the inside with a small piece of plastic, rather than navigated around in the dark. The elevator descends. The numbers count down. I watch them. 4 floors down, it opens onto a corridor I recognize from my first night. The administrative level, the scuff marks on the walls, the motivational poster. But today the corridor is more populated. Officers in uniform moving with purpose. A man in plain clothes with a badge on his belt, who glances at us, and glances away with the specific practiced disinterest of someone who has been told not to look. Callum moves through it all with the ease of a man who owns the water he swims in. Nobody questions him. Nobody asks where he's going. The building parts for him, the way water parts around something solid and dense. I walk beside him. I am aware of the officers' glances, curious, quickly suppressed, and I keep my spine straight and my expression neutral, which are the same things I do in every room where someone is deciding what category to put me in. We turn left at the end of the corridor, a door marked Observation. He opens it. The observation room is small and smells like the rest of the building. Stale coffee, institutional air, the specific staleness of a space that is used for difficult things and cleaned afterward but never quite aired out. There is a one-way glass panel along one wall, taking up most of its length, and beyond it a narrow room with fluorescent lighting and a height chart painted onto the back wall in increments. Currently, the narrow room is empty. A man is already in the observation room when we enter, not Okafor, someone I haven't seen before, compact and middle-aged with the particular wariness of someone who occupies a position between two worlds and has learned to survive it by being very still. He nods at Callum. He does not nod at me, which means he was told I would be here and has decided to process this information by pretending I'm not. Callum says, 10 minutes. The man leaves. We stand side by side at the glass. On the other side, the empty room waits with its fluorescent hum and its height chart, patient and institutional, designed for exactly this. The moment when a witness looks at a person through one-way glass and says what they saw. They're bringing someone in, Callum says. I need you to look at him. Tell me if you recognize him. From the night of the shooting. From the night of the shooting. I look at the empty room on the other side of the glass. I look at the height chart, its black increments running from 5 feet to 6'4". I think about the fire escape on October 14th, the rain coming sideways off the building across the street, the specific quality of darkness that is not absolute but is the urban darkness of a night with cloud cover and ambient street light. I think about what I saw and what I retained and whether what I saw is reliable or whether 6 months of not looking at it directly has made it unreliable. I think about Nathan. The door on the other side of the glass opens. They bring in 4 men. Standard procedure, though I know this from documentation rather than experience, 4 people including the subject, to prevent bias. They stand against the height chart. The fluorescent light hits them all the same way, flat, without shadow, the deliberate evenness of a room designed to remove the variables of darkness. I look at them. My gaze moves systematically, left to right. First man, too short, wrong build. Second, closer, but the hair is wrong, the posture is wrong, something about the angle of the shoulders. Third, I stop. I stop because something has happened that I did not expect, which is that the third man is not someone from the fire escape on October 14th. The third man is someone from the office. Not the night of the shooting, earlier, weeks earlier. A man I saw through the glass partition of Nathan's office, standing across the desk with a folder in his hands, speaking to Nathan with the particular body language of a transaction. Forward-leaning, something passing between them, something small enough to fit in a hand. I had noted it at the time. I had filed it in the same place where inconvenient observations go. The third man had not been at the shooting. The third man had been at the office 3 weeks before the shooting, handing Nathan Holt something, and Nathan had taken it, and the conversation had lasted 4 minutes, and I had gone back to my desk because it was not my business, and I was very good, at that point in my career, at knowing which things were not my business. My chest is very tight. I know him, I say. Callum turns from the glass to look at me. His attention is immediate and complete. From October 14th? No, from before. 3 weeks before. Maybe 4. He was in Nathan's office. I stop. I recalibrate. He gave Nathan something. A folder, or something in a folder. I didn't see the contents. I saw the exchange. A beat. You're certain? I'm certain I saw him in Nathan's office. I'm certain it was that man. I'm certain something was passed. I'm less certain about the exact date. 3 weeks, possibly 4. Late September. Callum is quiet for a moment. He turns back to the glass. I watch his face in profile. The jaw, the line of his nose, the quality of his attention as it lands on the third man through the glass. He looks at him the way he looks at everything, with that particular stillness that is not blankness but its opposite, a stillness full of computation. Do you know what was in the folder? he says. No. Do you know who that man is? No. Should I? He doesn't answer immediately. He presses the intercom on the wall and says, quietly, a single word I don't catch. The door on the other side of the glass opens. The 4 men are led out. The room is empty again. Its fluorescent hum continues. His name is Warren Alcott, Callum says. He is the Reyes Network's legal counsel. He has been their attorney of record for 11 years. He is, by every official measure, an upstanding member of the bar who has never once been charged with anything. I hear what he is not saying. He's the one who compiled the list. Callum turns from the glass. We believe so. Now we know he was at the office. We know he had contact with Holt before the shooting. We know the timing. He built the evidentiary map. He gave it to Nathan, knowing Nathan would sell it, knowing it would eventually reach someone who could use it. I hear my own voice working through it, the way it does in the best moments of legal work, when the structure of something reveals itself. Alcott wanted the network dismantled. He couldn't do it openly. He's too compromised. He'd go down with them. So he built a blueprint and handed it to the most corruptible person he could find, trusting that corruption would route it into the right hands. I stop. Because something has shifted in the room. Something in the quality of Callum's attention, the very specific way he is looking at me now. Not with the calculation I have come to recognize, but with something else. Something that takes me a moment to name. He is looking at me the way people look at someone they did not expect. We take the elevator back up in silence. I am processing. This is something I do that other people sometimes find alarming. I go quiet when information is large, and the quiet looks from the outside like composure when it is actually the opposite. It is the complete interior occupation of someone whose brain is running very fast on a problem it has just been handed. Nathan Holt had been given a blueprint for the network's destruction by the network's own lawyer. Nathan Holt had sold that blueprint, and in selling it had sold the names attached to it, one of which was mine. Nathan Holt had staged his own death, and was alive somewhere. And I had been on that fire escape on October 14th watching what I now understood was not a murder but a performance. And I had said nothing to anyone for 6 months, and the saying of nothing had kept me safe for exactly as long as it had taken Nathan's buyer to confirm that I'd been there. The elevator opens onto our floor. I step out. I walk to the kitchen. I fill a glass with water, and I drink half of it, and I set it on the counter, and I look at the city out the window, which is doing its ordinary Monday business, beneath an ordinary November sky. Callum comes to stand beside me, not close. The distance he always maintains. Enough space for each of us to be separate. Enough proximity for the conversation to continue without effort. You're thinking about Nathan, he says. I'm thinking about October 14th. A pause. What specifically? I turn the glass in my hands. The water catches the light from the window. I had a phone. I had 911. I had a full view from the fire escape of a man I had worked with for 2 years, being shot twice in the chest by a man in a gray coat, and I went back inside, and I locked the door, and I told myself I didn't have enough information. I stop. I breathe. But I did. I had enough to make a call. I didn't make it because I was afraid, and the afraid part was rational, and the not calling part was a choice, and I need to be honest with myself about that. Callum is looking at me. What are you asking me to do with that information, he says. It is such a precise question, not a reassurance, not a contradiction, not the easy response, which would be to tell me I had no good options, and anyone would have done the same. He is asking what I want from the disclosure, which is itself a form of respect so specific and unfamiliar that I feel it in my sternum. Nothing, I say. I'm not asking you to do anything with it. I'm just saying it out loud, because it's true, and it's been sitting in me for 6 months, and it's part of the architecture of what happened. Nathan was given a second chance at life that I didn't try to save, and it turned out he didn't need saving, and the entire thing is more complicated than victim and bystander, and I stop. I'm tired of carrying the version of the story that makes me only a person things happen to. The room is quiet. Outside, a bus passes on the street below. Someone's phone rings in the building underneath us and is answered. Callum sets his coffee cup down. He turns toward me slightly. Not fully, not the full body orientation he gives to problems he is solving, but a partial turn, the kind that means I am paying attention to you specifically and not to the room. I've been watching the Reyes Network for 3 years, he says, not quietly, but with a different quality than his usual speech, less structured, less like information being deployed, and more like something being offered. 3 years of documentation, surveillance, building the picture of what they are and where they are, and how they operate. And in 3 years, the thing I have never been able to get is a witness who saw something from the inside, who was there before and after, and who understands the legal structure well enough to testify to it coherently. He pauses. You walked into this building 4 days ago, and in 4 days you have built a clearer picture of the network's architecture than my people have managed in 3 years. I look at him. You're going to ask me something, I say. Not yet. But eventually. He looks back at me. At this distance, perhaps 3 feet, the kitchen counter between us. His eyes are dark and very steady, and I am aware of them the way I was aware of the 2 feet of charged space in the study yesterday, the way I am aware of him generally, which is to say with the entire surface of my attention rather than just the part 1 directed things. Eventually, he agrees. He tells me about Warren Alcott in the afternoon. Not everything. I do not think he is capable of telling anyone everything at once. It is structurally incompatible with how he moves through the world. But enough. Alcott had been the Reyes Network's attorney for over a decade and had, during that time, accumulated enough knowledge of their operations to destroy them several times over. He had also accumulated enough complicity to guarantee his own destruction alongside them if he moved openly. The list had been his solution, a way to create the conditions for the network's dismantlement without appearing in the foreground of it. The problem was that Alcott had underestimated Nathan's specific brand of greed, which was not strategic but immediate. Nathan had not sold the list to someone who would use it the way Alcott intended. He had sold it to the Reyes Network itself, in exchange for his own survival and relocation. The network had spent the past 6 months working through the names. Alcott did not know the list had been sold back. He believed it was in the hands of a federal contact he had trusted Nathan to deliver it to. He was, at this moment, somewhere in this city, believing the process he had designed was proceeding as intended. He doesn't know, I say. He doesn't know. He's building towards something that's already been reversed. Yes, and on Tuesday, when the network moves on the remaining names, Alcott will understand that his list reached the wrong hands, at which point he becomes a liability to the network and a target. I look at the floor plan on the desk between us. I look at the 3 circled exits. I look at Callum's handwriting, small, precise, the word unwatched in 3 places. You need Alcott to survive Tuesday, I say. I need Alcott to survive Tuesday and be made aware that his list exists, in complete form, in the hands of someone who can use it the way he intended. If he knows that, he has a reason to cooperate with what comes after. If he doesn't, the network dismantles him quietly, and no one with the institutional knowledge to rebuild the case from the inside ever comes forward. I am quiet for a moment. And Okafor. Okafor has the list, the original, Alcott's version, the one Nathan was supposed to deliver. Nathan made a copy before selling it back. Okafor has been sitting on it for 6 months, waiting for the moment when someone could receive it without getting killed for it. There is a quality to the silence that follows this, that I recognize from legal work, the silence of a case clicking into alignment, all its disparate elements suddenly showing their relationships to each other. I have felt it twice before in my career, both times at the moment, when a case that had looked complicated revealed itself to be simple, just poorly organized. It's a convergence, I say. Tuesdays when everything arrives at the same point, the network moves. Alcott discovers the reversal. Okafor needs to make his delivery. And I stop, I look up. What am I in this, specifically? He looks at me. He has been building to this. I understand that now, looking at him across the desk with the floor plan between us and 4 days of sequenced information arranged in my head. He has been building to this since the first morning, when he said, "I want you to stay because you've decided to." He has been giving me what I need to arrive here on my own, so that when he asks, it is not a command and not a trap. It is a choice. I need you to be the person Alcott hands the testimony to, the person with the legal knowledge, to receive it, understand it, and be a credible chain of custody for what comes after. Not an agent. Not law enforcement. A civilian witness with 5 years of paralegal experience and direct documented contact with Nathan Holt and the firm. He pauses. I need you to be the bridge between what Alcott built and what happens to the network on Tuesday. The room is very still. I look at the floor plan. The 3 circled exits. The word unwatched in his handwriting. I look at him. He is watching me with that expression I have come to recognize as his version of exposed, not vulnerable, because I do not think he does vulnerable in the conventional sense, but present. Fully, actually present, without the layer of strategy between him and the moment. I need you to trust me, he says. I know that's unreasonable. I'm asking anyway. I breathe in. I breathe out. I look at the city outside the window, the Monday afternoon ordinary business of a city that does not know what Tuesday holds. I look back at him, and I say, tell me exactly what Tuesday looks like. Every detail, nothing held back. If I'm the bridge, I need to see both sides of the river. He is quiet for a moment, the longest silence I have heard from him since I arrived. And then he begins. He talks for 40 minutes. He tells me things he has not told anyone in this building, things that require, in the telling, a degree of exposure that I can see costs him something, not in drama, not in any visible distress, but in the quality of his voice, which loses a fraction of its precision as he goes, becomes something slightly less controlled, slightly more like someone speaking rather than someone deploying language. I listen. When he finishes, the room is different. Not changed exactly. The same walls, the same window, the same floor plan on the desk. But the quality of the air between us has shifted in the specific way that happens when 2 people have crossed a threshold that cannot be uncrossed. He knows this. I can see that he knows it. Well, I say, I'm going to need a better plan than an 8-minute escape route through a stairwell that routes me back to the precinct. Something happens in his face. Something so brief and so unexpected that I almost don't catch it. He almost smiles. It is the first time. The first time in 4 days that his face has done anything other than compose itself carefully into whatever quality the moment requires. It is fractional, a shift at the corner of his mouth, a slight easing of the jaw, but it is there, and it is real, and it arrives without calculation, which means it is the most honest thing I have seen from him. I look at the desk. He looks at the window. The city goes about its Monday. And in a building 3 blocks north of here, in an apartment on the 7th floor, a man named Warren Alcott is sitting at a kitchen table with a cup of coffee and the settled, quiet certainty of someone who believes the plan he set in motion is proceeding correctly. He does not know about Tuesday. He does not know about Nathan. He does not know that his list is in a detective's desk drawer rather than a federal prosecutor's office. And he does not know yet that the paralegal who sat 4 offices down from Nathan Holt for 2 years and saw him in the corridor with a folder and said nothing for 6 months is at this particular moment the most important person in the architecture of everything he built. She is also looking at the city out a window. She is also thinking about trust. And she has just made a decision that will, by Tuesday morning, change the shape of everything. Havkioi Day. Chapter 5. The space between enemy and ally. Something is different now. Not between us exactly, or not only between us. Something in the quality of the floor. The way the rooms feel when I move through them. The particular acoustics of a space that I have been inhabiting for 5 days and am only now, today, beginning to understand as a place I actually live rather than a place I am being kept. It is a small distinction. It is also I am finding everything. I eat dinner alone that evening. He has calls. I hear his voice through the study door, low and occasional, the rhythm of someone working. The food is there when I come to the kitchen. Pasta, something with lemon and capers, better than anything I've cooked for myself in the past year. I eat at the window. The city below is doing its Monday night business, restaurants filling, taxis navigating, a couple arguing on a corner with the specific performative energy of an argument that is also a negotiation. I watch them resolve it in 3 minutes. The woman gestures, the man takes her hand, they go into the restaurant. I finish my pasta. He comes out of the study at 9. He does not speak immediately. This is one of his consistent qualities, the way he arrives in a room without the social reflex of filling it with sound. He goes to the kitchen. He pours 2 glasses of wine. He sets one on the counter nearest me without asking, and I take it without thanking him, and neither of us says anything about this small exchange of fluency, this thing that has grown up between us over 5 days without being announced. We stand at the window together. The city. The couple on the corner, I say. He looks at me. I was watching them. They were arguing, then they weren't. What were they arguing about? I couldn't hear. But from the body language, I'd guess one of them wanted to go somewhere, and the other didn't. They compromised on the restaurant. A pause. How do you know? She pointed at the restaurant. He resisted. She touched his arm. He took her hand. The argument ended, but the tension didn't, which means neither of them got exactly what they wanted, which is what a compromise looks like. He looks at the window. The couple has been gone for 15 minutes. He is looking at the place where they were. You read people, he says, not a question. Occupational habit. Depositions. Client meetings. Watching attorneys perform for juries. You learn the difference between someone who is telling the truth and someone who has decided that what they're saying is true. It's not the same thing. He turns from the window slightly. He is looking at me now, with that attention. The full surface kind. The kind that is not comfortable exactly, but is not threatening either. It is the attention of someone who is genuinely interested, which is different from the attention of someone who is assessing you for usefulness, and I have learned to tell the difference. Is there a difference between those two things, he says, telling the truth and deciding what you're saying is true? In court, yes, one produces reliable evidence. The other produces reliable performance. They're not the same. And which am I? The question arrives without any particular emphasis. He takes a drink of his wine and watches me over the rim of the glass and waits. I look at him. At his face, which I have spent 5 days learning and still cannot entirely read. At the jaw, where the tension lives. At his eyes, which are dark and steady and contain, I have come to believe, a great deal more than they show. I don't know yet, I say. You don't repeat yourself, which is a truth-teller's quality. Liars repeat themselves, because repetition feels like emphasis. You also don't modify your statements when challenged. You hold the position or you correct it, but you don't shade it to accommodate my reaction. That's honest. I pause. But you sequence. You deploy information in a specific order for a specific effect, which is a form of management, and management can shade into something else if the motive shifts. The silence is a long one. What would shift the motive, he says, if it became more important to keep me here than to be honest with me? He looks at me for a moment that is longer than the others. Then he looks at his wine glass. Then I'll tell you something I could have kept back, he says. Alcott knows you exist. Not your name, your category. He built the list to be handed to a specific federal contact, and he knows that contact has been made unreachable. He is looking for a new bridge. He will find one by Tuesday morning, or the window closes. Which means Tuesday is tighter than I thought. Yes. You were going to tell me this before tomorrow morning. It is not quite a question. Yes, he says. I take a drink of my wine. I believe him. This, too, is a shift. Tuesday arrives. It arrives, in the way of days that carry weight, as a series of practical details that are also something else entirely. The briefing at 7. The phone calls I am no longer excluded from, but am now asked to listen to, not to participate, not yet, but to hear. The map of the day laid out on the kitchen table, positions and times, and the specific geography of a city in which several things are about to happen simultaneously, and Callum Voss is responsible for all of them. I listen, I ask 2 questions, he answers both. By 10 o'clock, with the first phase in motion and 4 hours until the critical window, there is nothing for either of us to do but wait. He tells me this plainly. We wait here. Okafor moves at 2. Alcott is reached at 2:15. I am the receiving party at 2:30, at which point the documentation is transferred and the chain of custody is established. Until then, we wait. It is in the waiting that something shifts the way it didn't have space to shift while we were moving. The waiting opens up a room in the day, and we are both in it, and there is nothing tactical happening, and the absence of tactics is, I am discovering, when Callum Voss is most visible as a person. We eat lunch. He makes it. I did not know he cooked, or rather I knew he was capable of it in the abstract way that I know he is capable of most things, but I had not watched him do it before. He moves in the kitchen the way he moves everywhere, efficiently, without waste, with the comfortable authority of someone who has performed a task so many times it has become unconscious. He does not ask if I eat bread. He makes the sandwich and sets it down and sits across from me with his own, and neither of us makes anything of the domesticity of this, which is itself a kind of acknowledgment. Tell me something true, I say, because we have 90 minutes and the silence is beginning to feel like pressure. He looks up. About what? Anything. Not the case. Not Tuesday. Something that isn't operational. He considers this. He is not, I have learned, someone who performs consideration. When he pauses, he is actually thinking, actually moving through the possible options and selecting. I haven't slept in this building in 4 years, he says. I keep this floor, but I don't use it. I used it to manage the precinct operation, and then I stopped coming up here because there was no reason to. I look at the room, the books on the shelves with their cracked spines, the chess set mid-game, the kitchen that makes food appear without effort. Why are you here now? Because you were. He says it simply, without apparent calculation, and then he takes a bite of his sandwich and looks at the table, and I look at the window, and neither of us adds anything to it. I think about what it means to keep a floor of a building for 4 years without using it. I think about the chess set, which I looked at on my first morning and noted was mid-game, which means it was left there by someone at some point and never resumed, which means whatever game it was is permanently unfinished. Whose game, I say, gesturing at the chess set. He follows my gesture. Mine. I play against myself sometimes. It's the only version I find useful. Because you can't be surprised. Because I know how both sides think. I look at the board. The black pieces have a slight positional advantage. Control of the center. A rook that has been activated. The white pieces are being played more defensively, waiting, which means he left the game at the moment when the defensive player was about to have to make a decision. White's move, I say. Yes. What are they waiting for? A pause, long enough that I look up from the board. He is looking at me, not at the board. For something to change, he says. The board has been in this position for 6 months. I haven't decided what White does next. I hold his gaze for a moment. Then I reach across the table and move the white queen's knight, not to take a piece, to open a line. He looks at the board. He looks at the move. And then he does the thing that is becoming familiar to me now. The thing I did not expect from him, and keep encountering. The brief, fractional, involuntary expression that arrives before he can organize his face around it. He is amused, not smiling. But the quality of his attention shifts, warms, by some small degree, and I feel it the way you feel the sun move from behind a cloud. Not dramatic, not blinding, just a change in the temperature of the air. "You play," he says. I played. In law school prep courses, they made us study game theory. I was mediocre, but I understood the principles. That wasn't a mediocre move. It was the obvious move. White has been too defensive. If you open the line and threaten the center, black has to respond to you instead of building. Defense is just slow losing. He looks at the board for a long moment. Then he moves the black bishop 2 squares, a counter that is elegant and unexpected, and recaptures the initiative. "Now what?" he says. I study the board. I reach forward again, and as I do, as I lean across the table to reach the far side of the board where the white rook sits, I become aware of him in the way I have been aware of him in the study, in the kitchen, in every shared space for 5 days now. Not quite conscious, not quite involuntary, something in between. My hand is 6 inches from his. He is very still. I move the rook. I sit back. He looks at the board for a long time. Then he looks at me, and there is something in his expression that is different from anything I have seen there before. Something that is not composed, not strategic, not the careful deployment of attention. Something that simply is. Neither of us speaks. The chessboard sits between us with its open line and its activated rook and its 6 months of unfinished business. His phone rings. The moment ends. He picks it up. His expression organizes itself. He becomes, again, the person who is managing Tuesday. I breathe. I had not realized I was holding it. At 2:15, everything moves at once. I am in the study with my laptop and a clean USB drive and the specific, controlled focus of someone who has been given a role and intends to execute it precisely. Callum is elsewhere in the building. I can hear him distantly through walls and infrastructure, the occasional word through a closed door. The building below has a different quality to it today, a particular alertness that I am aware of without being able to name. At 2:22, a message comes through the secure channel Callum's people set up on my laptop this morning. It is from a number I don't recognize, and it contains 4 words. Ready when you are. Alcott. I type back, I'm ready. What follows is not dramatic. This is the thing about the actual mechanics of documentation transfer. It is never dramatic. It is careful and methodical, and slightly tedious, and it requires the kind of focused attention that leaves no room for fear, because fear is an emotion, and emotion takes up space that the task needs. I receive the files. I verify the chain of custody documentation against the firm's records I have access to. I confirm the timestamps. I cross-reference the names against the structural map I built yesterday. Everything aligns. Alcott's list is complete. It is what he built it to be. An architectural blueprint for the prosecution of an entire criminal enterprise. 11 names, 12, with mine, each representing a piece of the evidentiary picture. Combined, they constitute something that no single attorney could have assembled from the outside. I copy it to the drive. I verify the copy. And then, I sit back in the chair, and I put the drive in my pocket, and I look at the city outside the window, and I feel something that is not quite relief, and not quite triumph, but is in the territory of both. The specific feeling of something that was broken being made whole, not perfectly, not without cost, but structurally sound. Callum appears in the doorway at 2:41. He looks at me. I look at him. I hold up the drive. He comes into the room. He takes the drive from my hand, and our fingers don't quite touch, and I am aware of the not quite, in the same way I was aware of the 6 inches of space over the chessboard. He puts the drive in his pocket. He looks at me for a moment that is neither long nor short, but is simply present. Okafor got out, he says. Is he safe? He's with people I trust. That's not what I asked. A beat. He's safe. I nod. I look at the window. And the network. The Tuesday move. Disrupted. They're not gone. It's one operation, not the whole structure. But the list is out of their hands and in ours, and Alcott is talking, and the names are documented. What happens next takes longer and is less exciting, and involves other people with different skill sets, but the architecture is in place. I absorb this. The architecture is in place. 5 days ago, I walked through a precinct door in wet stockings and a bandaged hand, and the specific desperation of someone who has run out of options, and the architecture is in place. What happens to me now, I say? He doesn't answer immediately. He moves to the chair across from me, the one at the desk, his chair, the one he has sat in every afternoon this week, and he sits. The immediate threat is reduced, not eliminated. The network has other people. The operation is disrupted, not destroyed. But your name is now part of a formal chain of custody, which makes you materially less useful to them as a target. You're more valuable protected than silenced. That's a legal argument for my safety. It's an accurate one. What about a human one? The room is quiet. He looks at me. He is doing the thing. The full surface attention, the undecorated presence, and there is something in his expression now that I have not seen before. Not the controlled, almost smile from yesterday. Something raw. Something that arrived through the 40 minutes of talking, and the chessboard, and the handed drive, and 5 days of shared meals, and mapped exits, and partial truths. You're not going anywhere tonight, he says, and I'm not asking you to. Not a command, not a reassurance. Something else. I look at the chessboard. The game is still unfinished. White's rook, black's bishop, the open line between them. All right, I say. He arrives at 6 o'clock, which is early enough to be inconvenient and late enough to have been announced, which means he chose the timing deliberately. I hear him before I see him, his voice in the elevator, a different register from Callum's, lighter and faster, with the particular quality of someone who has learned that charm is a tool and uses it so constantly it has become the default rather than the deployment. Then the elevator opens, and he is there, tall, with Callum's coloring, but without Callum's stillness, his dark hair slightly longer and slightly less careful. Younger by perhaps 4 or 5 years, dressed well, the kind of well that announces itself, which is different from the kind that simply is. He looks at me and smiles. The smile is very good. It is the kind of smile that is designed to make you feel like you have been looked at, genuinely, when actually you are being assessed. I know this smile. I have watched attorneys use it. You must be Sloan, he says, as if he has heard about me. As if we are old friends, arriving at the same party from different directions. Callum appears from the hallway behind me. Something in the room changes. A quality of air, a shift in the thermal dynamics of two people who occupy the same space and are not entirely easy in it. Marcus, Callum says, one word, the specific compression of a name that contains everything a sentence would. Brother. Marcus's smile doesn't change. I heard you had a guest. I wanted to say hello. You could have called. Where's the fun in that? He moves into the room with the ease of someone who has been here before and knows the space, but there is something studied in the ease that tells me it is performed. He goes to the kitchen. He opens the refrigerator without asking. He pours himself a glass of water and leans against the counter and looks at me with an expression that is friendly in the way that pressure is friendly. Consistent, even, and ultimately about force. Callum doesn't usually bring people here, he says to me. You must be significant. She's a witness, Callum says. His voice is even. The specific evenness of someone managing something. Is that what they're calling it now? Marcus's eyes don't leave me. You know, he once kept a man in protective custody for 3 weeks without giving him a single piece of information about why. The man left angrier than he arrived. Is that the experience you're having? I look at Marcus, I look at Callum. I look at the specific geometry of what is happening in this room, which is a man attempting to insert himself between me and whatever I have been building with his brother over 5 days, and his method is information, the promise of it, the implication that he has things Callum hasn't told me. This is a recognizable tactic. I have watched attorneys use it on reluctant witnesses. I have all the information I need. I say pleasantly. Marcus looks at me for a moment. His smile adjusts slightly. Not gone, but recalibrated. Do you? Did he tell you about Elena Reyes? The room is very still. I keep my expression neutral. I am, at this particular moment, grateful for 5 years of deposition preparation. What about her, I say. He knows where she is, has for 2 weeks. She's in a safe house in the 9th District, 3 blocks from here. He watches my face. And she has been since the night you walked into this building. 3 blocks. Since the night I arrived. I do not look at Callum. I will not give Marcus the satisfaction of watching the information land between us. I look at Marcus instead, at his too easy smile, and his water glass, and his performed ease, and I think, you came here to damage something. I will not let you watch it work. Thank you for letting me know, I say. Marcus blinks. This was not the reaction he planned for. Behind me, I hear Callum's breath, a small, controlled thing, the kind that costs something. I'll leave you to it, Marcus says, after a moment that is slightly too long. He sets down his glass. He moves to the elevator. He doesn't look at Callum. The elevator closes. The room is the room again. The chessboard, the window, the city. I turn around. Callum is standing at the edge of the kitchen. He is looking at me with the expression I have come to think of as his most honest one. Not the controlled attention, not the managed stillness, but the face underneath those things, which is harder to read, precisely because it has less structure. He says, I was going to tell you. I look at him. I believe that too. But 3 blocks is 3 blocks, and 2 weeks is 2 weeks, and whatever the reason for the sequencing, whatever the careful logic behind it, Elena has been 3 blocks away since the night I walked through that door with wet stockings and a bandaged hand, and I have been here, not knowing. When, I say, that's the only question I have right now. When were you going to tell me? He is quiet. And in the quiet, in the specific texture of this silence, which is different from all the other silences we have shared in 5 days, I understand something that I have been building toward without knowing I was building. The answer matters less than what comes after it. What comes after it is the question of whether, after 5 days of sequenced truth and chessboards and almost touches, I am willing to stand in this kitchen on a Tuesday evening with the drive in his pocket and 3 blocks in the air between us and decide that I still want to be here. He says, tomorrow. I was going to tell you tomorrow. I look at the window. The city does its evening business. I say, tomorrow you take me to her. A long silence. Then, yes. I nod. I go to my room. And I lie on the bed, and I look at the coffered ceiling, and I think about Elena 3 blocks north, and Callum 2 walls away, and the chessboard in the living room with its open line and its unfinished game, and I think, this is what it feels like to be in the exact center of something, not falling in, not escaping, just in, and not, for the first time in a very long time, entirely sure I want out. Chapter 6. The Cost of Honesty. 3 blocks, on foot, in daylight, with Callum 1 pace to my left. This is the most exposure I've had to the city since I ran through it in the rain 6 days ago, and I feel it the way you feel your first deep breath after being submerged. The city's noise arriving all at once, layered and indifferent. A bus sighing at a stop. The smell of coffee from a cart on the corner. Someone's dog pulling against its leash toward a lamppost with the specific, focused determination of an animal that has one purpose and intends to fulfill it. Callum is wearing a coat, not the suit of yesterday, something darker and less formal, and the collar is up against the November cold. He walks with his hands in his pockets and does not look at me, but I am aware of his presence in the peripheral way that I have been aware of everything about him for 6 days, as a constant. A fixed point, something that the rest of the environment organizes itself around. We do not speak. The building is on a side street, narrower, quieter, the kind of residential block where people keep their heads down and their curtains closed and don't ask each other questions. Brick facade, 6 floors, the buzzer panel just inside the entrance vestibule, Callum presses one of the buttons. A pause. Then a click. We go up to the 4th floor. The hallway smells like other people's cooking and the specific floral detergent of a shared laundry room. These are the smells of ordinary life. Life that is not surveilled or sequenced or delivered by people who appear without sound, and they hit me somewhere unexpected, somewhere below the sternum where the body stores the things it is homesick for. Callum knocks on a door numbered 407. A long pause. The door opens, and there is Elena. She is smaller than I remember, which is impossible, because she has been exactly 5'4" for 11 years, and nothing about a person's height changes in a week. But she looks smaller. She is wearing clothes that are not hers. Oversized, borrowed, the particular looseness of someone who has been kept somewhere and has been provided for rather than choosing. Her hair is down, which she never wears it. Her face is the face of a person who knew this moment was coming and has been dreading it. She looks at me. She looks at Callum. She looks back at me. "Sloan," she says. Her voice is the same. Exactly the same, the specific music of it, the way my name has always sounded in her mouth. And for a moment, one moment, brief, involuntary. The last 11 years arrive all at once in my chest, and I am standing in a hallway on the 4th floor of a building, 3 blocks from where I have been living, and I am looking at my best friend. Then the moment passes, and I am looking at the person who gave the Reyes network my name. "Can we come in?" I say, not a question. She steps back. The apartment is small and clean and temporary in the way of all places that people occupy provisionally. No personal objects, no lived-in disorder. The particular neatness of a space that has been organized by someone who does not intend to stay. There is a couch, a table, a window that looks onto the street below, a coffee cup on the counter, a book face down on the arm of the couch with its spine cracked, which is the only thing in the room that looks like Elena specifically. Callum stays near the door. He does this without being asked and without announcing it, simply positioning himself in the part of the room that is least present, which allows the conversation that is about to happen to be between me and Elena rather than between the 3 of us. I sit on one end of the couch. Elena sits on the other. We look at each other. I know her face better than I know almost any other face in the world. I have watched it laugh and grieve and lie badly and tell the truth worse. I know the particular tightness around her eyes when she is frightened and the specific stillness of her jaw when she has made a decision she is not sure she believes in. Both of those things are present now. "I want to hear it from you," I say, "all of it, not the version he's told me, yours." She looks at her hands. Then she looks at me. 4 months before October, she says, I was approached, not by the network directly, by someone I knew, someone from my graduate program years ago who I'd lost touch with. He told me he was working with a federal task force, that they were building a case against a narcotics operation with 9th District connections, that they needed a contact inside the circle, not an agent, just someone who could provide background, names, associations. She stops. They told you it was legitimate. They showed me credentials, documents, everything that would look official to someone who didn't know what to look for. And they told me, her voice drops slightly, they told me there was someone in your office who was connected to the operation. Someone high up. They needed to know who had access to what. They needed me to help them identify people who might have seen things they weren't supposed to see. The room is very quiet. They asked for names, I say. They asked for names, people in and around the firm who might have had incidental exposure to sensitive information. I gave them a list. I didn't. She stops. Starts again. I didn't think it would go where it went. I thought I was helping dismantle something dangerous. I thought your name on that list meant they would protect you, not target me. She closes her eyes. When did you understand what you'd actually done, I say. When I couldn't reach you. When the number they'd given me for the task force contact stopped working. When I searched the credentials and found... She presses her lips together. They weren't federal. The task force didn't exist. The man who recruited me worked for the network, not against it. She opens her eyes. And I see in them the thing I was braced for, and the thing I was not, which is this. She is not asking me to forgive her. She is not presenting the story in its most favorable light, not softening the edges, or emphasizing the parts that reflect well on her. She is telling me the ugliest version because she has apparently decided, in 6 days alone in this apartment, that the ugliest version is the only one she has any right to give me. I look at her for a long moment. What were you promised? I say. She is quiet. Elena, what were you promised in exchange for the names? A breath. Long. Shaped around something she has been carrying. My brother's debt, she says. $50,000. He'd borrowed from the wrong people. He was going to... She stops. They said they'd make it disappear. $50,000. I look at my hands. My name on a list. 6 months of photograph surveillance, and a stranger's voice on this woman's phone, and a car following me through rain, and a precinct building and a room with no handle on the door, and 6 days of partial truths delivered in careful sequence. $50,000. The specific ordinary scale of it is somehow worse than anything large would have been. Did they clear it? I say. Your brother's debt. Yes. So it worked. For you. For what you needed. Something moves across her face. Not guilt. She is past guilt, I think. She has been living inside it for 6 days. Something more like the recognition of a truth that she would give anything to unmake but cannot. Yes, she says, it worked. The silence sits between us. I could say the thing that is true. I could tell her that I understand, because I do. I understand the specific terror of someone you love being in danger, and the specific desperation of someone who does not have the resources to fix it through ordinary means. I have spent 6 days in close proximity to the moral architecture of people who make those choices, and I understand its structure better than I did a week ago. But I also told Callum 3 days ago that I was tired of carrying the version of the story that made me only a person things happened to. Elena made a choice. The choice had consequences that were not hers to authorize. That is the shape of what happened, and I will not soften it because I love her, because love and accuracy are not the same thing, and I have learned, in 6 days, to hold both. I don't know what I'm going to do with this yet, I say, but I needed to hear it from you, and I needed you to say it plainly, without giving me the version where you were only trying to help. I was trying to help, she says quietly, and I hurt you. Both things are true. I stand. Both things are true, I say. I walk to the door. Callum is already there. He opens it without being asked. I don't look back at Elena. I cannot, quite yet, from the specific angle of where I am in this. Maybe later, maybe from a greater distance, when the shape of it is clearer. The hallway, the borrowed detergent smell, the elevator descending. We walk back 3 blocks in the same silence we walked there. He tells me in the kitchen. Not because I demand it. I don't. I sit at the counter and I look at the city and I wait. Because I have learned that waiting costs him something, and the thing it costs him is worth more than what I could extract by forcing it. He sits across from me. He puts both hands flat on the counter, a gesture I have not seen from him before. The specific, deliberate placement of someone who is making themselves still before saying something difficult. I knew about Elena 6 days before you arrived, he says. I knew her name was on the network's recruitment list as an informant. I knew the brother's debt, and the timeline, and the fact that she had given them names in exchange for it. I knew that one of those names was yours. He pauses. I did not tell you on the first night because on the first night you did not know me, and the information would have been a weapon in the hands of someone with no reason to trust the person delivering it. I look at his hands on the counter. You were managing me, I say. Yes, in the beginning. And now. He looks at me. The full-surface attention. The undecorated kind. Now I am telling you the ugliest version, because you deserve the truth more than you deserve comfort. That is a direct quote. You said it to me 3 days ago about yourself. I applied it. I look at him. He looks back. There is a quality to this moment that is different from all the previous moments in this kitchen. All the coffee and the floor plan and the chessboard and the wine at the window. It is the quality of a thing that has been built steadily over 6 days and has now arrived at its actual shape. Two people who have told each other the ugliest versions, deliberately, because they decided somewhere along the way that accuracy matters more than comfort. This is not small. What were you going to do if I'd never come through that door, I say? Keep monitoring, work the list through other means. Eventually reach a point where the network's architecture could be dismantled without a witness of your specific caliber. How long would that have taken? Years, possibly. And now, months, less, depending on how the Tuesday documentation processes. I look at him. I look at his hands, still flat on the counter, still holding that deliberate stillness. I walked into the right door, I say. A beat. The longest kind. Yes, he says. And then, because I am someone who has spent a week learning to distinguish between the things that are true and the things that are merely said, I say, and you're glad I did. Not a question. He looks at me. He does not answer immediately, because he never does. He is constitutionally incapable of speaking before he has decided to mean it. And in the pause, in the specific length of it, I watch his face do the thing it does not usually do, which is arrive before the words do. The thing I have been seeing in fragments all week, the warmth in the study when I moved the night, the almost smile in the identification room, the moment in the kitchen on Tuesday when the drive was in his pocket and he said, "You're not going anywhere tonight," and meant something beyond the operational. Now, in the kitchen on Wednesday afternoon, with the cold coffee between us and the city outside, and Elena 3 blocks away, and Okafor somewhere safe, and the drive in whatever secure location drives go when they're important enough, he looks at me and says, "Yes." One word. Plain as architecture, solid as the walls of the building around us. I breathe. He is close, across the counter, which is perhaps 18 inches of polished stone. I can see the particular quality of his stillness at this range. Not composed, not controlled, but the stillness of a person who is very carefully not moving. I lean forward slightly, an inch, maybe less. He tilts toward me. The movement is so small it could be nothing, but it is not nothing. I know the difference between a person remaining still and a person choosing towards something. He is choosing towards something. 18 inches of counter. The city outside. The specific quality of the silence, which is not the silence of two people who have nothing to say, but the silence of two people who are deciding whether to cross a line that has been building for 6 days toward exactly this. My phone vibrates on the counter between us. We both look at it. It is a number I don't recognize. And then I do. It is the secure channel from yesterday, the one that means Alcott's people. I look at Callum. He looks at the phone. He picks it up. He answers it. He listens for 12 seconds. His expression, which had been the closest to open I have seen it, reorganizes itself. Not into calm, into something colder and more specific than calm. "When?" he says. A pause. "Get everyone in." He hangs up. He looks at me. Marcus talked. He gave the network our location. The cold arrives fast, the specific cold of a threat that had been distant becoming present. They're coming here. They're already moving. We have a window, short. He is already at the hallway. He is already in the other room. The building below has changed quality again, that particular alertness that I felt on Tuesday morning, but louder now, more urgent. I can hear movement. I can hear, faintly, what sounds like commands being issued in low voices. I stand at the counter. I look at the 18 inches of empty space where the moment was. Then I go to the hallway. "What do you need me to do?" I say. He looks at me from across the room, the controlled face, the operational one, the one that manages things, and in it I see, very briefly, the face underneath it, the one that was tilting toward me 40 seconds ago. "Stay close," he says, "and trust me." "Working on it," I say. His mouth, for just a moment, does the thing. Then we move. Chapter 7. Running Together. He briefs me in 3 minutes. This is the first thing I notice. Not the urgency, which is present and real, but controlled, a tightly held thing rather than a spilling one, but the fact that he briefs me. Not tells me what to do. Not assigns me a location to wait in. He briefs me the way he would brief someone, with a role, with a position, with a piece of the plan that belongs to them. He says, "The network has confirmation of this floor's location through Marcus, who gave it in exchange for a debt reduction that will not, as it happens, be honored because Marcus has miscalculated how much his brother values loyalty over efficiency. The approach vector is from street level, which means we have the elevator shaft as our primary delay. Estimated window before first contact, 11 minutes, possibly less depending on traffic and the network staging. We are moving to a secondary location, which is prepared and has been prepared for contingency since the day the network identified this building. Okafor is already en route to the same location via a different path. He says, there is a vehicle in the building's basement garage. Not the building's elevator, the service access at the building's north side, which connects to a neighboring structure's parking level. The connection point is a door that looks like a utility closet and is not locked from this side. He says, I need you to carry this. He hands me a hard-sided case, laptop-sized, light in my hands. He does not tell me what is in it. He has, over the course of 7 days, learned that I will ask if I need to know, and will not ask if I have determined it is not yet critical, and he has apparently decided to trust that judgment. I take the case. He looks at me. Ready, I say. We stay together until the 3rd floor. If we separate, you go to the garage regardless. Don't wait. We're not separating. He looks at me for a moment. Something in his expression, something that has no business being there in the 40 seconds before a building is breached, arrives and is swiftly organized into something more useful. No, he agrees, we're not. We move. The stairwell is different at speed. I have been in this stairwell before, on the 3rd morning, in the flat gray of 6:42 a.m., moving carefully and quietly on a plan that was elegant and wrong. That stairwell was an architectural puzzle. This one is a body moving through space, as fast as physics permits, the metal treads ringing with each step, the sound bouncing off the concrete walls in a way that makes it difficult to know what is echo and what is not. Callum is ahead of me by 1 step, not more. He does not look back, but I am aware of his awareness of me, the slight angle of his body that keeps me in his peripheral field, the pace that is fast but calibrated to what he has apparently assessed I can maintain. This is not courtesy. It is the specific, practical attention of someone who needs the person behind him to stay close and is making that possible. 3rd floor. The door. He opens it. The connecting corridor, the one that the building's administrative level shares with the neighboring structure, is narrow and smells of the particular dampness of spaces that carry infrastructure. Pipes along the ceiling, fluorescent lights that flicker in response to something, a current fluctuation or a vibration in the building's bones. We move through it. At the midpoint, roughly, Callum stops. He holds up one hand, a gesture that is entirely unambiguous, requiring no explanation, the universal language of wait, and tilts his head, listening. I do the same. For 4 seconds there is nothing. Then, faintly, from above us, the sound of a door opening on a floor that should be empty. We move again, faster. The utility door at the end of the corridor is exactly where he described it, unmarked, slightly recessed, the kind of door that is designed to be overlooked. He pulls it open. On the other side, the neighboring building's parking level, Low-ceilinged, concrete, smelling of oil and cold stone, and the exhaust of cars that have recently left, or are about to. 3 cars in the section nearest the door. The third one, dark gray, unremarkable, the specific anonymity of a vehicle chosen for exactly that, has its keys in the cup holder and its doors unlocked. I know this because Callum goes to it without checking the others. He gets in the driver's side. I get in the passenger side. The engine starts. We are 4 blocks from the building when his phone rings. He answers it on speaker without taking his eyes off the street. A voice I don't recognize. Male, clipped, reporting in the specific shorthand of someone delivering a situation update. Says, Northeast entrance is compromised. First team is contained. Second team is 2 minutes behind the first. Marcus is in the south stairwell and has been stopped. The word stopped carries, in this context, a meaning I do not ask him to specify. Callum says, confirm the secondary location is clear. A pause. Confirmed. He says, proceed to the 3rd floor assets and secure the documentation chain. Yes, sir. He hangs up. I look at the street passing outside. Marcus, I say. He's been removed from the operational structure. He'll be dealt with separately. You're not going to hurt him. It is not a question. It is the thing I know about Callum Voss that I did not know 7 days ago, and know now as well as I know anything. He does not do what is easy when what is precise serves better. And the precise handling of a brother who has betrayed him is not violence. It is something colder and more enduring, which is removal. A pause. No, he says. I'm not going to hurt him. But he's gone. Yes, he's gone. He says it the way someone says something they have already made peace with. Not grief exactly, but the specific weight of a decision about a person you love that you made because it was right, rather than because you wanted to. I recognize the weight. I have been carrying a version of it since yesterday, when I sat on a couch 3 blocks from this car and told Elena that both things are true. We drive in silence for a moment. The city does its evening business around us. Restaurants filling, headlights appearing as the sky dims, the ordinary Wednesday evening choreography of a city that does not know any of this has happened. He takes a right onto a street I don't recognize, then a left. The neighborhood changes, quieter, less commercial, the kind of block where people come home and stay home. He pulls into a lot behind a 4-story building and cuts the engine. He does not get out. I don't get out. The building is dark in the way of somewhere that is waiting to be occupied. The lot is empty except for one other vehicle, and the night air coming through the car's slightly cracked window smells of cold and distance, the November smell of a city settling into winter. This is the secondary location, he says. Yes. Okafor's coming here. He'll arrive in approximately 20 minutes. I look at the building. I look at the car. He has left the keys in the ignition. I notice this the way I notice everything, which is to say immediately, and with the full paralegal attention that has been the most consistent thing about me for 5 years. The keys are in the ignition. The tank is full. I can see the gauge from the passenger seat. The road behind us is empty and leads north, and north leads out of the city, and out of the city leads to other cities and other roads, and a life that would look nothing like this one. He knows I have noticed. He is sitting with his hands in his lap and looking at the building and not looking at me, and I understand, with the specific, bone-level understanding that has replaced almost every assumption I walked into this week with, that this is not an accident. He has left the keys in the ignition on purpose. He has pulled into this lot and cut the engine and not moved and not looked at me, and the purpose is exactly this. The door is open. The road is there. The choice is real. I look at the road. I look at the building. I look at the keys, and then I look at his hands resting in his lap, and I see the thing I was not expecting, which is that they are not still. They are very slightly, almost imperceptibly, not still. The specific, controlled tremor of someone who is holding something tightly enough to make the hands work to stay quiet. He is not calm. He is performing calm, which is a different thing, in which I know the difference between, in which I know he knows I know the difference between. I take the keys out of the ignition. I put them in my pocket. He turns and looks at me. His expression, in the dim evening light of a car in an empty lot, is the most unguarded thing I have seen from him. Not vulnerable in the performed sense, not soft, just present, actually present, without architecture between him and the moment is this: he showed me the open road, and I took the keys. Neither of us speaks. Then he puts his hand on the door handle. He gets out of the car. I get out of the car. He puts his hand on my back. Not guiding, not possessive, just there. The same warmth I have been aware of since the first morning. The same fact of him that has been the most consistent thing in 7 days of inconsistency. And we walk toward the building together. Not running. Just walking. Together. The secondary location is a second floor of a building that is ostensibly a commercial property and is, in actuality, a space that Callum Voss has maintained for exactly this kind of contingency: a clean, prepared room with a secure connection, a kitchen that has been recently stocked, and the particular quality of a space that has been thought about and not inhabited, which is different from the quality of a space that has simply been empty. It is smaller than the floor above the precinct. It feels larger. Okafor arrives at 43 minutes past 7. I hear him on the stairs before I see him. The particular footfall of someone who has been moving quickly and is now making themselves slow for the landing. And then he is in the doorway, mid-40s, compact, wearing plain clothes that are slightly wrong for plain clothes, in the way of someone who dresses for other things and has made a practical adjustment. He looks at Callum. He looks at me. He says, "You must be Sloane Mercer." I say, "You're the one who kept missing the door." He blinks. Then, despite everything, he almost smiles. He looks at Callum. "She's going to be trouble." "Yes," Callum says. And there it is again. The thing at the corner of his mouth. The fractional adjustment. Not a smile exactly, but the place a smile lives before it decides to arrive. She is. Okafor stays for 2 hours. He and Callum move through the documentation together. The drive, the Alcott material, the chain of custody that I established and that Okafor now receives formally, with the kind of careful protocol that will matter enormously later when it is presented to people who need its provenance to be unimpeachable. I am part of this, not a bystander, not a protected civilian, part of it. They ask me questions, and I answer them, and my answers are recorded in the specific formal way that records things for use later, and when Okafor says, at the end, that my account is going to be what makes this prosecutable, he says it to both of us. To me and to Callum, like we are a unit. Like that is simply what we are. Okafor leaves at 10 o'clock. He shakes Callum's hand. He shakes mine. He says, at the door, without looking back, "Get some rest, both of you." Then he is gone. The room is quiet. We are alone in it for the first time since the kitchen at 6 o'clock this evening, when the phone rang and 18 inches of stone countertop failed to matter. I look at the window. The city outside is smaller from here. Fewer buildings, more sky, a different angle of the same lights that I have been looking at for a week from a different height. Callum comes to stand beside me. Not close, the distance he always keeps. But the distance has a different quality now than it did on the first morning, when it was the distance between a captor and a situation. And now it is the distance between two people who have stood side by side through 7 days of particular difficulty and have arrived at this window without either of them falling or running, which is something. "When this is over," he says, quietly, looking at the window, "you can go. I'll arrange everything. New documentation if you need it, a relocation, whatever is necessary to put distance between you and anything residual. The network is disrupted, not destroyed. I want to be honest about that. But the chain of custody changes your risk profile significantly. You'd be safe." He says it the way he says things he has prepared. Carefully, precisely, every word placed. I listen to all of it. And then I look at his hands. They are at his sides, and they are doing it again. The thing from the car, the almost imperceptible thing that I will spend the rest of my life being the only person in the room who notices. The very slight, very controlled tremor of someone who is saying one thing and feeling another. He is offering me freedom, and his hands are shaking. When this is over, I say. He looks at me. When this is over, I'm going to ask you something. A pause, the specific length of it. His full-surface attention arriving, as it always does, without apology or deflection. What? He says. Not tonight, when this is over. He looks at me for a long moment in the dark of a window with the city behind it, and 7 days of architecture between us and the particular quality of a thing that has been decided without being said. All right, he says. I go to the room that has been prepared for me. I lie on the bed and I look at the ceiling and I think, I took the keys out of the ignition. And he knew what it meant. And his hands were shaking. And there is one more chapter before I can ask him what I am going to ask him, and I am, for the first time in 7 days, not afraid of what comes next. I am something else entirely. I am waiting. Chapter 8. What staying means. Thursday arrives with the quality of a day that knows it is the last of something. I wake early, earlier than I have woken at any point in the past 8 days, which is saying something given that I have been waking before 6 every morning since I ran through a precinct door in the rain. The secondary location is quieter than the floor above the precinct. The street below carries a different register of noise. Residential, unhurried, the sound of a neighborhood rather than an institution. I lie in the bed, and I look at the ceiling, and I think about the question I told him I would ask. I think about the keys in my pocket. I think about the 18 inches of countertop. I think about the almost smile, which I have now catalogued at 3 distinct occurrences and which I am aware is a thing that very few people have ever seen and which I have seen 3 times in 8 days. And I think about what that means. I get up, I make coffee, I stand at the window with it and watch the street wake up. At 7:43, Okafor calls. Callum takes it in the next room. I hear the low frequency of his voice, but not the words. This building is better insulated than I initially assessed, which is not surprising given what it was designed for. I wait. I drink my coffee. I watch a man walk a pair of matching terriers with the particular air of someone who has done this exact walk at this exact time every morning for years and intends to continue. Callum appears in the doorway at 7:51. He is carrying his own coffee. He looks like he has slept, which is more than I expected. Okafor, I say. The documentation chain was confirmed overnight. Federal Contact received the package at 2 this morning. Alcott is cooperating fully. The network's operational leadership has been served with preliminary charges in 3 jurisdictions. He pauses. Okafor has been promoted, effective immediately, to a position that is not under the 9th Precinct's command structure. I take a drink of coffee. He's out from under you. He's out from under me. You arranged that. I arranged it months ago. It only required a trigger. Yesterday provided one. I look at him. He looks at me. The morning light is doing something to the room that the evening light does not. It is more direct, less forgiving, and in it I can see his face with the specific clarity of good morning light, which strips away the quality of controlled performance and leaves something more essential. He looks, in this light, like a person. Not the captain who wasn't a captain. Not the man behind the desk who said, "We've been expecting you." Not the architect of sequenced truth and floor plans and chess games left mid-play. Just a person, standing in a kitchen with a coffee cup at 7:51 in the morning, having just told me that an honest detective has been freed from a corrupt precinct and that the network that has been threatening my life has been served with preliminary charges. Just Callum. So it's over, I say. A pause. The length of it is specific and familiar. The formal danger is over. The investigation will take time, months. possibly longer. Your name will appear in documentation. There will be proceedings, but your role is as witness and chain of custody, not as a target. And the network's capacity to treat you as a target has been significantly disrupted. He looks at his cup. You're free to leave. I'll have transport arranged within the hour. And I'll have the documentation package sent to whatever address you designate. Everything will be in order. He says it the way he said it last night, carefully, precisely, the language of a prepared statement. His hands are around his coffee cup. I cannot see if they are still. I go to my room. Not to pack. There is very little to pack. 8 days of accumulated presents, a laptop, the clothes that were brought from my apartment on the second day, the hard-sided case which has been returned to Callum, the floor plan which I have folded and kept in my jacket pocket since Monday. That is all. I sit on the bed. I have been a paralegal for 5 years, which means I am professionally trained to assess situations without the distortion of what I want them to be. I can do this. I have done it in rooms with grieving clients and combative attorneys and judges who had made up their minds before the first argument was presented. I can look at a situation and see its actual shape. The actual shape of this situation is as follows. I walked into a precinct 8 days ago with wet stockings and a bandaged hand, believing that institutions protect people, and discovered that the captain's chair was occupied by a man who runs the city's criminal infrastructure and had been monitoring my movements for 4 months. I was held in a converted floor above the precinct for 8 days, during which time I was not harmed, was given food and shelter and access and information, was shown the exits on day 3, was made a participant rather than a protected object, was told the ugliest versions of multiple truths by a man who appears constitutionally incapable of softening them, and built an evidentiary chain that will, over the next several months, dismantle a narcotics operation responsible for 7 deaths and the corruption of a police precinct. I also moved a chess piece across a board, reached past him for a cold coffee cup, and had my almost kiss interrupted by a phone call. These are the facts. The facts also include, he said I'd like you to stay because you've decided to, not because you believe you can't leave, and then gave me the exits. He said I was going to tell you about Elena tomorrow when he hadn't, and the admission cost him something visible. He talked for 40 minutes on Monday afternoon, and his voice lost precision as he went. He showed me an open road on Wednesday evening, and his hands were not still. He told me, when this is over, you can go. I'll arrange everything. And then he said it again this morning, with the same words, in the same careful order, and the same hands around a coffee cup. I look at the floor plan in my jacket pocket. I look at the window. I think about what it means to stay when leaving is real, and the door is genuinely open, and the road north is actually there, not a performance of availability, but the actual thing. I think about what it means to choose something you understand completely, with full knowledge of its complications and its cost, and its particular, dense, difficult quality, because the alternative, the clean road, the new documentation, the life somewhere else, is also genuinely available, and is simply not the one you want. I think about the chessboard, White's knight, the open line. Defense is just slow losing. I stand up. I put on my shoes. I go back to the kitchen. He is at the window. This is where I have found him most often, at a window, with the city below and the coffee in his hand, and the quality of someone who is present in the room, and also, slightly, somewhere else, looking at something I cannot see from where I usually stand, which is on the other side of whatever space separates us. Today I walk across that space. He hears me. He turns slightly, not fully, just the partial turn, the one that means I am paying attention to you specifically, and I see his face in profile against the window light, and I think, as I have thought on several previous occasions in the past 8 days, he is terrifyingly beautiful in the specific way of things that are what they are without apology, sharp and composed, and containing more than they show. I stop beside him. Not at the distance, close. The distance I would have maintained on day 1, on day 2, on any of the careful days that came before the chessboard and the drive, gone. He looks at me. I want to ask you something, I say. He is very still. All right. I look at him for a moment. At the jaw. At the eyes that are dark and steady and contain. I have come to understand everything he does not say, which is a great deal. I'm not leaving. I say it plainly. Not today. I have a question first, and depending on your answer I may leave after, but I don't think I will. I want you to hear that before I ask, because I don't want you to think what I'm about to say is a negotiation. A breath. From him. Barely audible. All right, he says again. What happens to you, I say, if I leave? He is very still. The room is very still. The city is doing its ordinary Thursday morning business, indifferent as always, and the window light is doing its work, and the coffee cups are on the counter behind us, and the chessboard is 3 blocks north in a room that neither of us is in, and the question is in the air between us, and neither of us is moving, and I am watching his face with the full surface attention I have learned from 8 days of paying attention to this particular face. He looks at me. He says, nothing changes operationally. I wait. He says, the work continues. I wait. His jaw tightens. The specific tension that lives there, the one I identified on day 1 as the place where his control works hardest. I watch it now and I think, that is where he keeps the things he doesn't say. Callum, I say. His name. Just his name. He closes his eyes. Briefly. The specific, deliberate brevity of someone who has opened a door inside themselves and is allowing one moment of what is behind it before closing it again. And then he says nothing would change, and nothing would be the same. The sentence arrives with the particular weight of something that has been true for a while and is only now being said. It does not sound like something deployed. It sounds like something that costs something to say, which from Callum Voss is the most specific and reliable signal that it is true. I look at him. I step forward. 1 step. The distance between us, which is perhaps 18 inches, collapses to something much smaller, and I am close enough to see the particular quality of his stillness, which is not stillness at all, but the effort of it. I put my hand against his jaw. He goes absolutely motionless. Not away from me, toward nothing. Just stopped, the way a person stops when something unexpected arrives and the body has not yet decided what to do with it. I'm not leaving, I say. And that is not a negotiation. That is a choice that I am making with full information about who you are and what you do, and every complicated detail of the past 8 days. I am not staying because I am afraid to go. I am staying because this is where I want to be. Do you understand the difference? A pause. The longest kind. Yes, he says. His voice, stripped by proximity, has a quality I have not heard in it before. Not the low, controlled instrument of a man managing a room. Something rougher, something that breathes. Then I need you to stop offering me transport arrangements. I look at him. And I need you to say something that isn't operational. The silence holds. And then he does something I was not prepared for, which is that he reaches up and puts his hand over mine, on his jaw, warm and steady and certain. He holds it there. His eyes, when I look at them, are the least opaque I have seen them. They are, at this particular moment, almost entirely legible. Stay, he says. 1 word. Not an arrangement. Not a security assessment. Not a sequenced piece of information carefully deployed at the correct moment. Just that. Just stay. And then he tilts forward and I tilt forward and the 18 inches becomes nothing, and his mouth is on mine, which is, it is not gentle exactly. It is the kiss of someone who has been holding something carefully for 8 days and has now put it down. It is deliberate. It is warm. It moves after the first second, from the specific restraint of a first kiss into something that has been waiting longer than 8 days. Something that has, I think, been waiting since a man in a suit sat at a captain's desk and said, "We've been expecting you," as if he knew already that this was how it would go. I do not pull away. He does not pull away. And when we finally do separate, when there is a breath between us and the city outside the window and the coffee cups on the counter and the floor plan in my pocket and all the architecture of the past 8 days, he keeps his forehead against mine and says nothing, because there is nothing that needs to be said. The choice has been made, on my terms, with my eyes open. Later, in the kitchen, I pick up my phone. He is in the next room. I can hear the low register of his voice, a call, something operational, because his world does not stop being his world, simply because one morning in it was different from the others. This is a thing I understand about him and about this. He is still what he is. The city is still what it is. The network is disrupted but not gone. The 9th precinct is still compromised below an empty floor that neither of us will use in the way it was used for the past 8 days. None of these things have changed. I have not changed either. Not fundamentally. I am still the woman who walked through a precinct door because she believed institutions protect people, and I have discovered that some institutions are not what they appear, and that some people who run them are also not what they appear, and that the difference between a trap and a shelter can be, in certain specific cases, the same room seen from a different angle. I am a paralegal. I understand systems. I understand how they are built and where their load-bearing walls are and what you can do from the inside that you cannot do from the outside. I open my contacts. I find Okafor's number, which he gave me last night with the specific, practical gesture of someone who expects it to be used. I call it. He answers on the second ring. Miss Mercer. Congratulations on the promotion, I say. I'd like to discuss something with you. Not today. Give it a week, let the documentation process. But I want to talk about what comes after. A pause. Then, with the slightly amused quality that I have now identified as Okafor's register for things that are both unexpected and correct. What specifically? There are 8 other names on that list besides mine. 7 of them are... I pause, because the word addressed carries too much weight to say plainly, not available. But the 8th is Alcott, and Alcott has information about the network's legal infrastructure that no federal contact has yet been given access to in a form that is properly witnessed and documented. I'd like to be in the room when that happens, in a formal capacity, as a witness with a documented chain of custody and 5 years of paralegal experience. A long pause. You're asking to be involved in the ongoing investigation. I'm asking to be useful. There's a difference. Okafor is quiet for a moment. Then I'll make some calls. Thank you. I hang up. I put the phone in my pocket. I look at the window. The city is doing its ordinary Thursday morning business. Buses, coffee carts, people with their heads down and their purposes intact, moving through a city that is neither safe nor unsafe, but is simply the specific city it is, complicated and indifferent and full of doors that look like one thing and are another. Callum appears in the doorway. He looks at me, at the phone in my hand, being put in my pocket, at my expression, which I imagine is not difficult for him to read at this point. Okafor, he says, I asked to be included in the Alcott deposition, as a formal witness. He is quiet for a moment. That will mean continued involvement in the investigation. Yes. It will mean your name in proceedings. I know. It will mean, I say, that I am doing something with what happened to me, rather than carrying it. And it will mean that you and I have a reason to be in the same city that is not emergency relocation, or protective custody, or an open road that I chose not to take. I look at him. Is that a problem? He looks back at me. The almost smile, not almost, this time, fractionally more present than almost. Not a full smile. I do not think he does those in kitchens on Thursday mornings, or possibly ever, but it is closer than anything I have seen. No, he says. It's not a problem. I put my hands in my pockets. He puts his hands in his pockets. We stand at the window together, not quite touching, not the performed distance of the first days, but the natural distance of two people who are not trying to be either closer or further, who are simply where they are. And we look at the city which is doing nothing in particular, and which does not care that 8 days ago, a woman ran through a precinct door and found the wrong man, and is now, 8 days later, precisely where she intends to be. In a moment I will ask him what the chessboard looks like at the precinct floor, the one that has been mid-game for 6 months, and whether we can go back and finish it. I will ask this partly because I want to know, and partly because the question will make that thing happen at the corner of his mouth again, and I have decided that making that happen is something I intend to do as regularly as possible going forward. In a moment. For now, the city. For now, this. Epilogue. Harbor. 1 year later. The thing about being a paralegal is that you learn to read rooms. Not the surface of them. The furniture, the lighting, the clothes people wear, and the expressions they put on to go with the clothes. Anyone can read that. What you learn, over years of standing in the background of difficult conversations, is the room's actual temperature. The specific quality of attention that people pay to each other when they think no one is watching them pay it. The weight distribution of a space. Who in it has power, and who is borrowing it, and who simply doesn't need to borrow because they have already owned it for so long it has become invisible. I am standing in the ballroom of the Meridian Club on a Thursday evening in November, exactly 1 year after a photograph appeared in my mailbox, and I am reading the room. The occasion is the annual fundraiser for the 9th District Community Legal Foundation, which is an organization that did not exist 14 months ago, and which exists now as a direct consequence of the documentation chain I established in a secondary location on a Thursday morning with a cup of cold coffee and a drive in my pocket. The foundation provides pro bono legal services to residents of the 9th District who have been, in one way or another, failed by the institutions that were supposed to protect them. It was Okafor's idea. I helped design it. Callum funded it, without appearing to fund it, which is a kind of architecture I have spent a year learning to appreciate, the way things can be built from the inside without the builder's name on the facade. The room is full. Not full in the way of obligations, not the stiff-backed attendance of people who are here because absence would be noted. Full in the way of a thing that has arrived at the right time for the right reasons, people who are genuinely pleased to be somewhere and are showing it in the 100 small ways that pleasure shows when it is not being managed. I know a lot of the faces now. A year is a long time and no time at all. It is long enough for the Reyes Network's operational leadership to have been formally charged in 3 jurisdictions and for 2 of those proceedings to have reached preliminary hearing. It is long enough for Warren Alcott to have given 16 hours of depositions, all of which I attended in the formal capacity I requested from Okafor in a kitchen on a Thursday morning, and all of which produced documentation that will, the prosecutors tell me, form the backbone of the eventual case. It is long enough for Gerald Haas to have retired as captain of the 9th Precinct, which he did in February, 3 years ahead of schedule, in exchange for a recommendation that produced no charges and a pension that arrived without incident. His replacement is a woman named Captain Dana Ferris, who is, by every available measure, the kind of person who files reports when she finds bribes rather than accepting them. Okafor told me this with the specific satisfaction of a person who has spent years waiting for an institution to become what it claims to be. It is long enough for Elena Reyes to be gone from my life. Not gone in the final sense. She is somewhere, I believe, the northwest coast, which she always loved and which is far from the city we both lived in, and from the person she was in it. I do not hate her. I do not hate her either. She is simply someone I used to know, and the shape of what she did fits inside the larger shape of what happened. And I have made a kind of peace with both that is not forgiveness exactly, but is accurate, which is what I asked of myself, and of Callum, and of Elena herself. And accurate is what it is. It is long enough to finish a chess game. That took 3 weeks after the Thursday morning, because Callum does not rush things that he has decided to do properly. We went back to the floor above the precinct. It is no longer in use as an operational center, for reasons that are both practical and personal, and we sat across from each other at the low table, and we finished the game that had been mid-play for 6 months before I arrived and for 8 days while I was there. Black won, because Black had the stronger position, and because the white player had spent too long on defense, which is something Sloane had told the black player on the day she moved the knight. He said, "I let you win." I said, "You absolutely did not." He said nothing, but the corner of his mouth did the thing, and I had, over the course of 3 weeks, become sufficiently accustomed to its arrival that I could simply watch it happen with the specific pleasure of a person who has learned how a thing works and enjoys the learning. We play every week now. He wins approximately as often as I do, which is either an accurate reflection of our comparative abilities or a deliberate piece of strategy on his part. I have not yet determined which. Okafor finds me near the window at 8 o'clock. He is in a suit, which is not how I am accustomed to seeing him, but which suits him in the way that formal clothes suit people who carry themselves with the same authority in all contexts. No adjustment required, no performance of the role. He has been promoted twice in a year. The second promotion put him in a position that I will not describe specifically, but which means, in practice, that when Callum Voss needs something navigated through the formal structures of a city's law enforcement apparatus, Okafor is the mechanism by which it is navigated cleanly and without residue. They do not like each other exactly, they respect each other precisely, which is a different and more durable thing. "You look like you're reading the room," Okafor says. "Habit. What are you seeing?" "I consider this. I look at the room, the faces I know and the ones I don't, the quality of the conversations, the specific way the people from the 9th District talk to the attorneys who now represent them, and the way the attorneys are learning, visibly, to listen rather than instruct. People who didn't used to have access to the room, I say in a room, and people who used to own the room trying to figure out what the new configuration looks like." Okafor looks at the room. "That's about right," he says. "Is it working? Ask me in 5 years. I nod. Fair answer. This is the thing about institutional change, which I have learned over 12 months of sitting in depositions and drafting documentation and helping design a legal foundation from the inside of a city that resists being redesigned. It is slow, and it is unglamorous, and it is mostly paperwork. And the paperwork is frequently frustrating, and the frustration is worth it in ways that do not announce themselves until later." Okafor accepts a glass of wine from a passing server. He looks at me. "He's watching you," he says. The tone is carefully neutral, which is how Okafor discusses Callum when he is being diplomatic. I look across the room. Callum is standing near the far wall with 2 people I recognize as a city council member and her chief of staff. He is listening to something, nodding once at the appropriate interval, projecting the quality of presence that I have watched him project in every room I have seen him in. Not threatening, not warm, simply dense. An object of substance. The kind of presence that produces a small gravitational field and which the people near it tend to orient toward without realizing they are doing it. He is also in the manner of someone who is paying attention to 2 things at once while appearing to pay attention to only one, looking at me. Not pointedly. Not in the way of someone making a statement. Just in the way that a person looks at the thing they know exactly where it is in a room, which is different from searching for something, and is instead the specific, settled attention of someone for whom the other person's location is simply a constant. I look back at him. The city council member says something. He responds. He does not look away from me while he does it, which I have also learned is a thing he does. The capacity for parallel attention, the ability to hold multiple things at once without losing the thread of any of them. Diplomatically put, I say to Okafor, "I try." He moves away into the crowd, and I hold my wine glass and watch Callum across the room for a moment, and I think about what I know now that I did not know a year ago, which is extensive, and I think about what I will know a year from now that I do not know yet, which is also extensive, and I think, this is what it feels like to be in something that is not finished. Not an emergency, not a crisis, not an 8-day sequence of partial truths and chess games and an almost kiss interrupted by a phone call. Just ongoing. Alive. the particular quality of something that has no conclusion yet, because it does not intend to have one. He comes to me at 9:15. The council member and her chief of staff have moved on to other conversations, and the room has reached its particular peak evening quality, looser than it was at 8, the wine having done its social work, the conversations having warmed into something more genuine than the early evening performances. He comes to stand beside me. His hand settles at my waist. Not the hand of someone making a point, not possessive in the performed, declarative way of a person who needs the room to know. Just there, the way you put your hand on something you intend to remain near, which is a different gesture entirely, and which contains, in its quietness, everything that the louder version does not. I am aware of it the way I have been aware of him for a year, as a constant, as a warmth, as the specific and irreplaceable fact of a person who is present. I do not look at him, he does not look at me. We look at the room together. Okafor's speech was good, I say. It was. A pause. Yours will be better. I'm not giving a speech. You designed the foundation, with your funding, which you arranged to be invisible. Foundations need visible architects. Then Okafor is visible. I'm the structural engineer. A pause. The quality of a pause that is warm rather than weighted. That's an accurate description, he says. I look at him. Sideways, from this angle, in this light, which is the warm light of a well-run event, rather than the morning light that shows everything, or the evening light that flatters. In this light, he looks like the person I have been learning for a year, which is to say, he looks like himself. Dense, composed, containing more than he shows. The jaw, where the tension lives. The almost smile, which is currently approximately 2/3 of the way to arriving, and is being held there in the specific way of someone who is present enough that holding it back takes effort. You're doing the thing, I say. He knows which thing. You're staring at my jaw, he says. I'm reading it. What does it say? I look at his jaw. I look at the room. I look at the city outside the tall windows, which is doing its ordinary Thursday evening business, entirely indifferent to any of this, and always has been. That you're going to let the smile happen in approximately 40 seconds, I say, because there's no one in the room that you need to be composed for, and you've gotten better at not being composed when you don't have to be. A pause. 30, he says. I look at him. His mouth does the thing. Not the fractional version, not the almost. The thing itself, the full, unguarded, entirely unperformed expression of a person who is pleased and is not, at this particular moment, managing it. It does not last long. It never does. But it is real for the length of time it exists, which is something I have come to understand as the most reliable thing about him. What he shows you, when he shows it, is always real. I lean into his hand at my waist. He does not say anything. I do not say anything. The room continues its warm business around us. Conversations, the clink of glasses, the particular acoustic of a space full of people who are, mostly, doing something they believe in. The city outside does its thing. The year does its thing. And I think about a door with no handle on the inside, and a precinct building on a rainy night, and a man who said, "We've been expecting you," with his hands already knowing my name. I think about the exits on the floor plan. I think about the keys in the ignition, and the road north, and the choice I made in an empty parking lot on a Wednesday evening when I took the keys out and put them in my pocket. I think about the chessboard, White's knight, the open line. Defense is just slow losing. His hand is at my waist, not possessing, not performing, just there, the way a hand is when it has found its place and intends to remain. I lean into it, and the room holds us both, and the city holds the room, and the year holds everything that came before it and everything that is coming, and there is no word exactly for what this is. Only the fact of it. Which is enough? Which is more than enough? Which is, I have learned, what harbor means. The end.